player strike, which allows you to bring up to 2 characters and 2 of each Terminator and Paladin squad.
Fun.
Army rule here is and instead of teleport assault, you get a CP on a 5-up each time you use a
I'm very
strike.
interested to see it sometime because I was looking at TTS poking around. The same people that made the FTC board made a boarding action board.
Really?
Yeah, and it's got like click at a button. There's like 10 different layouts you can just load in. It's really neat, and the doors are interactable, so you actually can throw them open and everything.
That's fun. I knew that like the terrain pieces of it existed for the old boarding action, but TTS workshop boarding. Is that the boarding action optimized table? Is that the one?
Let me go to my things.
No, this was updated last May.
Fuck you, bitch. My files. Subscribed items. I'm looking at. Oh yeah, you're right. Sorry, excuse me. I'm dumb. Damn. I thought it was I thought it was more up to date. It said, "Oh, this is part of the FTC table mod." Well, shit. Never mind that. We have nothing.
I mean, the optimized the FTC table mod is old.
Oh, really?
So are we waiting for Nate then?
We're currently live.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the stream is live, but the stream's always just like it's got all the extra stuff in it.
Okay.
Like a behind the scenes.
Well, the recording is not.
Oh, the author on that mod, Mark, says in the comments that he'll be updating it with the new book.
Woo! I'll take it. I want to try it out sometime. Because like when the guy set up the board at the game store, the board was a lot bigger than I expected.
Yeah.
Honestly. So I'm very excited to try it out.
So Leagues of Votann have 2 detachments. Yeah.
Wow.
Droid Salvagers.
The most love they've ever gotten.
We get a book.
And the other one is the Hearthfire Strike.
The what now?
The Hearthfire Strike.
Hearthkin Warriors, isn't it?
So it's up to 2 Einherjar champions, up to 2 Einherjar Hearthguard, 5 or 10 models.
Well, that sounds evil, and I know what I'm running.
At the start of your first battle round, select 1 enemy on the battlefield. That unit gains 1 judgment token. And in addition, each time an enemy unit with 1 judgment tokens or more is destroyed, you can place 1 judgment token on an enemy unit that is visible to 1 or more of your models.
Fuck you, and fuck you too.
Fuck you because I killed you. Fuck you because I saw you.
Yep, the rage.
And your detachment rule.
Pretty aggressive. You're next.
Your detachment rule is add 1 to advance and charge rolls.
Get them across the board and watch them do nasty things.
The enhancements: the first time the bear is destroyed, each enemy unit on the battlefield gains 1 judgment token. The other one is Gulix Stars. Each time the bearer ends a charge move, select 1 enemy unit with engagement range and roll 1d6. On a 2 to 4, the enemy suffers 1 mortal wound. On a 5+, the enemy suffers 2 mortal wounds. If the results in this is 1 or more enemy models being destroyed, you can select up to 1 closed hatchway within 6 inches of the bearer and open it.
Nice.
So you run at somebody so hard, you explode them, and a door opens.
Well, I would like to think that when you get to open a door as a result of it, it's because you body checked them into the door.
Yep.
Using the grav-assisted charge that the Hearthguard get. Or the Einherjar, I should say.
Pretty neat.
Okay, well, do we want to get started?
Sure.
Sure, why not?
Cool. Where is this start?
Wait, 1 second. There we go.
Start event. Oh,
Now I'm ready.
okay. Was ready?
Yes.
All right.
I kicked in.
Good evening, everybody. Happy weekend. Welcome back to Blackstone Fortress, episode 3. Cue the fake applause that I'm still not going to edit into the recording. And
Wow.
yeah, we have a bit of a pared down crew today. We've got Ryan and Colleen are gone. They've abandoned us, and we hate them. I'm gonna make sure that they know, because
They're on a penitent crusade. It's fine.
They're the away
I'm
team.
picturing Colleen cosplaying a Sister of Silence and Ryan's locked in a cage.
It's just got a little label on it, says the black shit.
I think their car's not black, unfortunately.
Darn.
It would be too perfect,
Hmm.
The universe can only conspire to perfection so many times. And then Nate's running late, and I think that is it. So for tonight, it's just myself, Chris, aka Snowy Night Owl, and Mark, and Coda, aka Limerick.
Hello.
So
What, I don't have an AKA?
You don't need an AKA, because I'm not ever going to accidentally call you something other than Mark.
I suppose so.
It's more so for people that are not part of our friend group. When I go, so Limerick, and they're like, hold on, who's Limerick? We haven't met Limerick yet.
That's true. I don't think you've ever actually called me by my screen name before.
I will be honest, your screen name is too hard to shorten without sounding like I'm referring to you as like a gangster rapper. And
okay,
I immediately decided that I wasn't going to use it when I first met you. And you were introduced to me with your real name, and I was like, all right, cool. We're just going to go with it.
All right.
So that was how that came about.
Yes.
And then Coda, I've been through 5 usernames with you?
3.
Is it 3? Oh no, I've had 5. You've had 3.
Yes, I went through one, or changed over just when we met to Peary, and then Limerick I changed over after I stopped playing WoW for a while.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, good times.
Right.
So we're it's been a big couple of weeks for Warhammer since our last recording. We've got Space Marine 2 has come out, which is just utterly wilding. I kind of want to, so I shouldn't say Space Marine has come out, because it isn't actually out yet. And which we know because you two nerds are not playing as much as I have been up to my eyeballs in this game.
Yes.
Yes, correct. The official release date is in the 9th.
The 9th, yeah.
Yeah, it's on Monday. So interestingly, so Steam Charts isn't tracking players, which is disappointing. Let's see, Space Marine 2 play.
I mean, it has a mostly positive review at 18,000 reviews.
Yeah, so it's got its issues. I mean, launch, obviously they've struggled a little bit with servers. Crossplay is broken completely, to the point where if you have crossplay enabled and you are playing entirely in a lobby that's on the same platform, all PC, all PlayStation, all Xbox, having crossplay enabled will still break the lobbies. And it breaks lobbies to the point where, so Pilsh and I were trying to do co-op. I got kicked out of his lobby halfway through a mission. It sent him back to the battle barge, gave him access to the second mission without telling him he'd missed the back half of the first one. And then he made it up through and he finished mission 3. He logged off, he logged back in, it completed mission 1, which unlocked his pistol choices for him, which he didn't have. But then it reverted his progress on mission 3. So it was a little concerning. But then we figured out if you turn off crossplay, the lobbies work just fine. We don't have any problems.
Awesome.
So that was a thing. But by and large, the game's really quite good.
Yeah, that's what I've heard and seen. You know, I caught I think a couple minutes of your stream the other day, having a good time with it.
It will be one I get probably Monday. I just, life.
Yeah,
Yeah,
life happens.
you
Cars
know, I
break and
recently
you spend a bunch of money, and
it is what it is. You know, I just spent some money as well myself on Star Trekker. Very happy with this game. Need something slow and in space to bide my time. I will be getting Space Marine 2, rest assured.
Yes, but I mean, it's been from what I understand, it's been well received.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, honestly, it's good. There's a lot of people that talk about the commentary that I've heard from some people is that the story loses momentum when the second enemy that's not Tyranids shows up. No spoilers, I promise.
Yeah. Next podcast. Spoilers.
Yeah. But and the argument is that like one of the big strengths of this game is because the swarm engine makes Tyranids feel like Tyranids. And I 100% like being swarmed consistently by 20-30 Hormagaunts at a time, and there's 2 or 3 Tyranid warriors that are in there causing problems, and you've got Termagants shooting at you from the other side, and it's utter chaos. It feels like you're fighting Tyranids. It feels really, really good. And the second enemy type doesn't do that because they're not Tyranids. And the one article in particular that I was reading, but I've heard the sentiment sort of echoed in other places, was saying that as soon as that swarm behavior is gone, the game loses a lot of momentum and steam. And I'm like, I feel like you're wrong, because the second enemy type is just as hard for different reasons. And I can't really get into what those reasons are without, spoiling what the enemy type is.
Right.
Right. I think the thing is, it's pushed a lot of PR into the Tyranid swarm.
Yeah.
Right.
That's also showcasing.
So I think the big thing is when you're buying a game with the mentality of, it being a 40K version of Starship Troopers or a 40K version of the best parts of Helldiver, and then halfway through the campaign or however far through the campaign, it shifts into being what Space Marine 1 was more like, from what I heard.
A little bit.
Which was still amazing, but you expected that.
So the issue is that I think a lot of people got it into their head that this game was going to come out and it was going to compete with games like Starship Troopers and Helldivers, and it doesn't. Space Marine 2 is a very linear game. The levels are linear. It's about, like, you can kind of explore within those levels, and there's little things hidden here and there, but by and large, the operations in particular, the 6 operations that you get when you go to the end game, feel a lot more like a strike from Destiny 2 than they do a mission from Helldivers or anything like that, where Helldivers is like, here's a map, get your shit done and get out. Right. Space Marine is, you've got this path that you follow, and there's enemies in the way, and you've got an objective to complete, and you've got to get from point A to point B, and then you've got to, kill the Hive Tyrant, shut down the McGubbin, whatever.
I think if people took it as a Space Marine version of Darktide, it might have been received differently.
And that's where I was going with it, is that this game delivers on the 40K fantasy that I feel like Darktide missed. Like, Darktide very specifically was like, we don't want you to be Space Marines because it's really hard to deliver on the Space Marine fantasy without making either the game too easy or the game too hard. And I heard conversation from the developer that during dev, they actually originally had planned this game to be 4-player co-op instead of 3-player. But they're like, in order to make Space Marines relatively like lore faithful for their power level, we couldn't render enough enemies to make the levels hard with 4 people on the map. And
because of how they made each class, the moment you allow a 4th dynamic in there, it's not just an extra person, it's all their abilities.
Yeah. And that's just it. Like, it is. And I want to emphasize that the game is insanely fun. It's everything I wanted Darktide to be. Darktide needs to push into its niche more, and like Darktide's got some stuff coming that I've been kind of keeping a half an eye on their patches. They've got a big gear rework coming and blah 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 blah, and all of that is fun. And I can't be a 10-foot colossus in Gravis armor holding a heavy bolter with 500 rounds, screaming as I eviscerate everything downrange of me, sometimes including teammates. So, the power fantasy that this game delivers on is insane. To interrupt and not let you guys speak for just a half a second and get back to my original point, though, the talking about, the game loses all this steam in the back half. I think if you're not a Warhammer fan and you come into it and you just want to hack and slash Tyranids because they go squelch and it's a lot of fun, I can totally understand that. If you are a Warhammer fan, though, the second half of the story is about delivering on the character dynamics that they set up in the first half. And those character dynamics are in part entirely rooted in who Titus is and where he's been, as well as delivering sort of a payoff for the bad things that have happened to Titus, which are really only impactful if you understand the wider implications of things like him being sent to the Death Watch for 100 years, right? And him being a Black Shield. So if you care enough to understand a little bit of the lore and you get invested into the characters, the back half of the story feels like a payoff of all of the work that you've put in, particularly the final mission. The final mission is so good, and I will fight anyone that says that it's a bad mission. It is an hour and a half on veteran difficulty. It is a long mission. The final boss fight is like 20 minutes by itself. It is so much fun. And I'm honestly, as much as I'm happy that the operations are not recycled story missions, they're actually, you play as one of two other squads that Titus gets command of to do secondary objectives that they actually reference and talk about during the story in the operations, which is so cool. It's so cool because you're like, oh, that's right. In this part of the story, I was off doing this and I heard about what this squad did and now I get to experience it. It makes it easier to, explain why you've got, a Reaver, a Sternguard veteran, and a Gravis heavy gunner doing a mission together, right?
That makes sense.
All this kind of stuff. Anyway, so as a Warhammer nerd, and if you're here listening to this, you are a Warhammer nerd or your family of a Warhammer nerd, and you can appreciate this. As a Warhammer nerd, the story is really good, and I'm looking forward to what else they do with it. And the one twist that comes up at the end, I did not see coming at all. It absolutely knocked me sideways, and I just mind blown. I'm so excited.
Okay. As a quick follow-up, because I've been asked this question a couple of times by people that I play games with that aren't Warhammer people that kind of want to get into it. And Warhammer as a hobby is very daunting in terms of playing it and also lore, just decades of lore. I have been posed the question, which game should I pick up that would be great for me to sink my teeth into the lore as a first-time person? Do you think Space Marine 2 would feel that the best of all the Warhammer games that have come out so far? Or would you recommend something else?
Yes and no. I'm gonna answer that with a different question. A big part of it is 40K is broad enough in scope that there isn't going to be really anything that's a good lore 101.
Right.
And that would be the first thing. So if I was asked this question, the first question that I would ask back is, what's your favorite type of game?
There's so many types of Warhammer.
But that's what's your favorite type of game? Because if you want I play all games and it doesn't really matter answer, I'm going to tell you to get Dawn of War 2. It's old. It looks old. And it's one of the best Warhammer games ever made. And it does a really good job sort of introducing the broader scope of the lore. Space Marine 2 is somewhat narrow in focus. It is a story about Space Marines.
Right.
And that's...
I'm going to interject.
Uh-oh.
And it's not going to be a popular opinion.
Damn.
I'm going to gatekeep here a bit. Warhammer has had a horrible track record with games.
Okay.
We've got phone games, we've got computer games, but none of them have had really high quality games. The ones that are the highest quality don't care that you're new. And what I mean by that is, you don't need to know the lore to beat up Tyranids, but if you want to fully like the game, you need to know what a Tyranid is.
Right. Not going to hold your hand.
The best games that have been made for Warhammer, Dark Tide, Space Marine 2, Space Marine 1, Dawn of War 2, even because it doesn't hold your hand. they are set up in an established world, and they're not world building games.
Well, and that's kind of where I was gonna go with my point, is that games are not a solid introduction. Hi, Pilch. Nate's here, everybody.
Hello.
He decided that we were worth joining.
Okay.
We were talking at the top of the show about how we hate Ryan and Colleen now because they've abandoned us.
Okay.
So just to really quick to recap, we've been talking about Space Marine 2 and how Space Marine 2 is awesome and how I really love Space Marine 2.
It is great.
And Mark posed the question that he's been posed, where would Space Marine 2 be a good introduction to Warhammer for people who are interested and new to the hobby? And I said, well, yes, but also no.
From a lore standpoint, absolutely not.
No, it's a good introduction to what is cool about 40K, which is the idea of a grimdark universe. Everything wants to kill you. However, you are 10 feet of ceramite and rage, and you are willing to weaponize all of those things. And that's kind of a good introduction to that concept. I had said that the best game that I think would introduce you to sort of a wider scope of what Warhammer is would be Dawn of War 2, talking sort of genre agnostic. And to follow up on Limerick was saying that the games is a terrible introduction, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. The problem is, and the issue with answering this question with like a snap answer, and this is why anybody who knows what they're talking about is going to either answer you the way Limerick did, or they're going to answer you the way I did, where it's like, is that in a lot of ways, Warhammer is what you want it to be, right? So you look at taking a step back from games for a second. If you look at Black Library fiction, you can go through Black Library fiction and you can find detective noir stories. You can find sort of Vietnam era war stories. You can find galaxy spanning grand Shakespearean epics that are 68 novels long. You can find pseudo comedy series, Cough Cough, The Infinite and Divine.
Excuse me, 10,000 years of a
pseudo comedy.
Beautiful relationship.
But this is what I'm talking about: is that Warhammer is in many ways what you make of it, and that's where, like, if somebody was to come up to me and say, "Hey, how do I get into Warhammer?" I'm not going to have if you come up to me and you say, "Hey, how do I get into Gears of War?" I'm going to say, "Go play Gears 3. It'll explain everything you want to know." Right? Sure. How do I get into Halo? Go play Halo Reach. It'll explain everything you want to know. How do I get into Warhammer is, okay, do you have 3 hours and are there any coffee shops nearby? Like,
it's not even like,
so I'll put it this way.
Yeah.
I would say to anybody that's like, what game gets me into Warhammer?
Sure.
Space Marine 2 or Darktide. They both have their flaws, because all Warhammer games have their flaws. Yeah. And I refuse to acknowledge that Space Marine 2 doesn't. And I'm not even talking like launch flaws. I've yet to see a licensed game that doesn't have flaws that people who like it are just willing to look over.
Sure.
Overlook.
Yeah.
What I will say is play those two games because they're the newest and you're most likely to be entertained by them. What that entertainment then does is acts as a go find out more at your local library.
Yeah, a catalyst.
Because
people are going to see.
You're going to go, okay, Titus was an Ultramarine. What is an Ultramarine? How do I find that out? And then I'd go Google Ultramarine, man.
Yep. People are going to see Space Marine 2 and be like, hell yeah, I want to play as John Space Marine and go figure out what the hell this is. It's just giant.
Pretty sure Titus is John Space Marine, and
you're going to learn exactly what you need to learn to play the game, and that's about it. And this is what I love about Warhammer. That's all you need.
Yeah.
On tabletop, in a game, in a novel, you can pick up the Horus Heresy pretty much anywhere after the first 3 books. Like, read the first 3 and then skip to the last 3. You don't need to know the rest.
Yeah.
Because nothing is predicate on the fact that Fulgrim killed Ferrus Manus.
Yeah.
It's just a nice fact to know.
Oh, bro, spoilers.
Nothing is predicate on that. There's no greater detail to that isn't explained by the book you're reading.
Yeah.
But
well, okay. I mean, there will be certain moments where, who is it? Is it Valdor is talking to Ferris Manus's decapitated head, or is that Russ?
What the fuck?
no, that's Sanguinius.
Oh, that's right. Sanguinius has this whole conversation with
But he's not talking to his decapitated head. He's talking to the spirit of Ferris, and Ferris acknowledges it and tells him the backstory.
Huh.
Oh, I forgot about that part.
Like they're talking on the vengeful spirit, saying, "Hey, I'm not really here," and Sanguinius is like, "Yeah, I know. Our brother killed you." And so you don't need to know how that happened. Like this is the one thing that the Black Library does amazingly well is
exposition.
It wants to tell you its story, but it wants to tell you its story in a way that you want to read the other books because you heard about it somewhere else.
Yeah,
I like that. That's nice.
Curiosity.
Like one of the main points about one main character in the Horus Heresy is that he goes psycho for a bit.
Okay.
I've never read one of those books, but that is a major character development in him. Want to know how I learned that? Because in book 65, he talks about how he's about to slip back into that and how he hadn't been like that since exposition.
Oh my god.
But not in a way that feels like it's dragging because I didn't read those books.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And when I do read those books, now it explains that. And I'm like, oh, sweet.
Yeah. No, and that's where like the answer to your question, Mark, is how do you want to start? Like it's
the answer is very nuanced and multifaceted.
Take your pick. Do you like detective noir stories? Go read Eisenhorn. Like
and this is like you talked about how Dark Tide had some failings for you, Chris. And I think this is why you never played Imperial Guard. You like the power fantasy.
Oh, 100%. I play Chaos Knights. I love the power fantasy.
But as someone who does enjoy being just Joe Schmo against the universe, Dark Tide fills that. Dark Tide is the grimy underbelly. You literally are a prisoner that's had his execution stayed because something worse came along.
Yeah.
And so they gave you a las gun and went, well, if you can be useful, cool. If you can't, you'll die.
I should probably clarify that most of my issues with Dark Tide were from a design standpoint where like the gear system was super awful.
Yes.
And the missions were really repetitive and the matchmaking was horrible.
Necessarily the game.
It wasn't the set dressing. It was sort of the foundational functionality.
It was they took Left 4 Dead 2, put it under a 40k skin and didn't improve on it.
Well, but like the part that I'm going to try not to turn this into a rant. I'll keep it brief. The part that really pissed me off about Dark Tide, and like I had all of this faith and I was super confident, is because it was Fat Shark and they were coming off of the utterly wild success that was Vermintide 2.
Yes.
And I'm like, if anybody is going to deliver on a solid 40k 4-player co-op game, Space Marines or not, it's going to be Fat Shark, because they're going to find a way to make, you know, the chaos infested hive city at least interesting to play in, and the enemies will be fun and the mechanics will be there and the classes will feel good. And the set dressing was incredible. The storytelling was really good. I like the way they sort of drip fed you information, just like you were a convict that has had, you know, a stay of execution essentially just because you were in the right place at the wrong time. And then you get into it and you're like, oh, well, the guns suck, and getting guns that don't suck is going to require 1,000 hours of gameplay, which is all going to suck because the guns suck and I can't get better guns.
Yeah, the progression system kneecaps the game. I will not.
Yeah,
I love the game because it's near and dear to me. But I fully admit that the progression system kneecapped it.
Yeah. No, I enjoyed the game until I just kept doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah. I got my ogre into max level, and then it was at the part where it's like, okay, now I need to work on getting better gear so that I can progress into harder missions. And that was the point that I was like, oh my god, this is awful.
Yeah, see, I literally played the Psyker class with the
shards.
With the shards with like the arrows.
Yeah.
And because that was better than any gun. that I could get.
Hmm.
Now, can I hijack this onto technically the second point I wanted to make, but I think it fits in better as the first.
Sure.
No.
So we're all talking about how to get into this hobby, right?
Sure,
Like,
yeah.
what was the lead into the hobby, and how games didn't work. But I want to pose something that I think affects a lot more fans of 40K.
Okay.
What happens when you played an edition that just burns you out? Now, I'll admit that Nate and Mark haven't been around long enough to really feel that. I don't think.
Correct.
Nope.
But a lot of people who played 8th edition and 9th edition learned the term bloat. So I was reading through one of my codexes, and I'm not going to name which one because I don't want fans to come after me and say, "Oh, but really, it was good."
Sure.
They had 22 stratagems.
Yes, I
Oh.
remember this. Oh my god.
They had 22 stratagems plus your core 12 that
Yep.
everybody has.
Yep.
They had relics galore. They had armor upgrades galore.
Oh my god.
Their psychers had more spells than you could shake a stick at, but only could know 2 of them. So you had to choose which 2 of the 18 they could know.
Yep. Mhm.
The rule bloat was just massive.
Yes.
And when you're talking about fan experience, it's hard to remember all that as a new person, or even as an old person.
Mhm.
Yep.
100%.
Personally, my dad got involved in 9th and hated playing because by turn 3, but just building an army, he's like, okay, so what stratagems do I need to use? So what me and him would do is we'd build a 1,000-point army. We'd go through the stratagems that fit that 1,000-point army, and I'd say, okay, forget all of them but these 2. Just
Yeah.
use these 2 for this game. And he
Yeah.
found that manageable.
Yes.
And I've heard from numerous people that 8th and 9th did that to a lot of them. The rule bloat was just so intense.
Yep.
And it pushed them away from the game.
Hmm.
Now, the reason I bring all this up is because I feel that the tabletop game is at a point where that has been fixed and would, if given a chance, a lot of those people returning would be happier.
Mhm. Like I think you're 100% right. Like I remember starting in 9th edition personally, with Necrons, my one love. And it's insane. It's like what we have now with attachments. You had like 6 different dynasties you could choose from, and they had to be correct colors and all that jazz. You had 24 stratagems. You had all this different crap. You if you feel like a tan in any sort of sense, we had the same kind of thing. You'd choose like 4 powers, and you would switch them every turn. You use a stratagem to switch it around, and it was crazy just to keep track of. And you had protocols, which you would have to decide at the beginning of the game before the first battle round which one would activate on each round. It's just so much. It's just a big ball of proverbial wax.
I have to step away for 2 seconds, but I'm just gonna, when I get back, I'll talk about sort of my experience starting way back in the day, originally in 3rd edition, and then coming back to the hobby in 7th. So I will be back shortly.
My big thing was I started back in 3rd. I played a bit in 5th. I got back to it in 7th. I really dug into it in 8th and 9th.
Yeah.
And so when I dug into it, it was at its possibly most bloated state.
Yeah.
And it was brutal. And because not only do I have to remember all the rules for my army, but as a competitive player, I'm trying to remember the rules of the other armies.
Yep. What not to do.
You have to remember 150 different stratagems. You have to remember all their different rule combos.
Oh my god.
Right. And not, as I've said before, not that I'm ever expecting to have someone cheat or whatever, because our community is pretty good about that.
Sure.
But people make mistakes, and I don't want to lose because he forgot that he couldn't do this round 2.
Yeah, they're potentially game-changing mistakes, which people aren't doing intentionally. I do it all the time when I'm playing with you guys.
And so, I'm trying to remember that, not for those reasons. Like, I'm not trying to just know it because I need to know it. No, you don't necessarily need to know every other army's stuff,
Right.
but I don't want to get gotcha'd because I didn't know that, Grey Knights could teleport.
Yeah, it feels bad.
So I'm trying to remember everything. I'm, getting codex PDFs offline just to go through their stratagem page to try and pick out which ones I think people would use.
Yeah. So many tabs open.
Yeah, and it's insane.
Did you
And
ever
then
play with like Astra Militarum during the 9th edition with
Yep.
orders? How was that?
Well,
What'd you do?
So, okay, just to give an idea of what bloat meant back then, and the Astra Militarum orders, there were certain orders that could be given out by certain people to different things.
Yep.
So, let's say, for example, your commissar. He could give out what I call commissar orders, which were pretty niche, but those are the only orders he could give out.
Yeah.
And he couldn't give them out to tanks or anything, just to infantry. And so what 10th came along and said, okay, all orders, everybody has the same orders. Tanks don't have different orders than infantry. Everybody has the same orders. And what we're doing is we're saying, if you share the keywords with the thing you're ordering, you can give them the orders.
Nice.
So unless it says otherwise. So for like example, a tank commander has the squadron keyword. He can give orders to squadron things. A Castellan has the regiment keyword. He can give orders to regiment things.
Commissar.
No, the exclusion to the rule there is that, like, my Lord Solar Leontis, who is the named character of all named characters in Astra Militarum,
Yeah.
he can give orders to both squadron and regimental, but his ability says that.
Gotcha. Okay.
So if there's an exception to the rule, it's stated. But it's nice because I don't have to remember, okay, what was the movement order for tanks?
Yeah.
And what was the movement order for infantry? Because they were named different things. It's now just move, move, move.
Yeah. Move, move, move. Yeah.
So it's gotten a lot easier. And they've done that across the board on 10th. On 10th, you know, your detachments have what, 6 stratagems?
Yes, sir.
Then you have your detachment rule and maybe a handful of enhancements you might be able to use.
I think it's like 4 capping.
Yeah, and so like, yes, I could see detachments getting bloated, as in like armies having too many detachments. And by that I mean, flavor-wise, it'd probably be amazing, but competitive-wise, does a faction really need 8 detachments if only 2 of them are good?
Right. I get that.
But
Custodes.
exactly.
Kind of like actually kind of a follow-up question, Limerick. I'll pick your brain here a bit. In that sense, with like they kind of cut down trim a lot of the fat. How do you feel about them dropping the point costs for war gear options?
It made it so much easier. For
think it
people
just
who
makes
are just getting into 10th
Yeah.
now, you don't understand that when you built an army, if you had a unit of Space Marine intercessors with a sergeant who had just a gun, that would cost you X. But if you gave that sergeant a power fist, it costed you Y.
Now it's
all the same. Now, according to them, they've accounted for that, so that they said most people are going to pick the most powerful item. We're just going to give the point cost for that. So there's no reason not to take that power fist anymore, unless, of course, you are a lore flavored player who's like, well, no, my sergeant wouldn't have a power fist because they're tasked with being backline defense, and power fists are frontline weapons.
Right.
But in a competitive scene, it made it so much nicer because you didn't have to cherry pick 25 points off something to try and get a plasma pistol on your sergeant.
And I get that.
When they took it away from, because first at the end of 9th, they took it away from Astra Militarum.
Yeah.
They were the only army that they took it away from. And I was like, that makes so much sense, because a squad of Cadians could have 4 special weapons. And like literally the point difference between a squad of Cadians with no special weapons and a squad of Cadians with the best special weapons was like a 35-point difference. And you're doing this 5 times over. So you're trying to make up 150 points somewhere.
Yeah, brutal.
And that's just the best ones. If you wanted flamers on someone, that would be only 5 points. But if you wanted a plasma gun, that's 10.
Yeah.
So they've done it so much nicer now.
Yeah. I agree.
I would like eventually, and this is going to sound bad, I'd like eventually for it not to be an option.
Oh, yeah?
I'd like it to be that, the Cadian squad that you're fielding has 2 of this and 2 of that. And like I know that makes it difficult because but flamer options are better for this. Nobody uses the flamer.
All those upgrade kits that they just released.
No, nobody uses the flamer. I'm sorry, it's a strength 3 weapon. It doesn't matter that it doesn't hit. It doesn't need to hit that it auto hits. It's a strength 3 weapon.
Doesn't wound, yeah.
It doesn't wound. It doesn't. It does 1 damage. Strength 3. No AP. No, thank you. When you're giving me the option of a plasma gun or a melt-a-gun, no, I'm not taking the flamer, especially when my freaking unit has grenades.
Yeah.
So I'd like for them to finally be like, okay, realistically, who takes the flamers? Nobody, except for sisters. So we'll give them the sisters.
Yeah, give them the sisters. Salamanders get decent flamers, right?
Well, but you're bringing not eradicators. You're bringing aggressors for that.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
Frankly, so you have 2 data sheets for aggressors: one Boltstorm aggressors and Firestorm aggressors.
Mm-hmm.
And have them pointed differently, and maybe they have different abilities now. I'd rather see more variance in that regard. So, like, for example, who is it? Tau. Right now in 10th, all their suits are broken into different units.
Yeah.
So instead of having the ability to have one suit unit have a billion different weapon options, you now have 4 different suit units that have different options.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to see that, because then you could see possibly more difference between them. Whereas, let's say, a Purgation Sisters unit could have a bonus to having a flamer weapon.
Okay.
And then maybe I say Purgation, just it's the shooting Grey Knight arm unit, but whatever. Like, the Fire Sisters now can re-roll wound rolls of 1 on their flame weapons, and then the Melta Sisters can, advance and shoot or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, you can now. Those units seem to be more impactful because they're fit to their weapons.
Yeah,
you're not
Very
trying
specifically.
you're not trying to fit the weapon to the unit otherwise.
Right. I think that would be honestly a pretty neat design from the bottom up.
And I think it would also benefit, or like at that point. So when you do that and you float out the units or the data sheets, to reduce bloat, get rid of the baseline one where it's the many options. Just throw away that. So now you have 3 heavy weapon sister squad data sheets. Well, okay, do you really need 3? Like, statistically, is anybody bringing plasma guns with them? If they can have plasma guns, or is that just a thing that you put in the sprue? And if they're not, then maybe we don't need to bring them. I'm all for, and I know that people are going to say, "Oh, but I like my sisters with the plasma guns. It makes them flavorful." Okay, but
you'll live without them.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, still have them. Just run the melter rules. Like, I'm all for proxying.
Sure. It's a Game Workshop plastic.
Yeah, put the flamers on them or the plasma on them. Paint them up like plasma for all I care. Just run the data sheet the way it's supposed to run.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, overall, I agree. 10th edition has just become a really, really nice, really concise edition. I have very limited experience, but I think that this kind of is a really great time to get into 40K tabletop. Personally,
my one issue with 10th, and I'll say this to be transparent, their codex releases have been
awful.
Yes.
Well, I won't say it's been feast or famine.
Yeah, it's been either you get an amazing codex or your army's at the bottom of the trash heap.
Yeah, like and because of that, the middling armies right now are the ones that don't have codexes.
Yeah. Like Death Guard, they're 54% win rate because they don't have a codex.
Yeah, because they haven't been touched yet.
Because they work the way that they work.
It's just fine.
And so that has been my complaint with 10th, is that I'd At this point, I'd almost rather not get a new codex, and that sort of sucks because you always want something new for your army. That's the point of the hobby.
Right.
But as I have said to Mark many times, with the way that the meta works and with the way the FAQs work, a bad codex is just one FAQ from being fixed if they
Yeah.
decide to do it. So
It's so wrong.
If long as they like, and that's a kind of a gripe I have with 10th edition, but it's kind of like a tertiary thing. I have my own codex that I have physically. I had to buy it. I got my code on the app. It's great. I use it when I go out. That information in the app for the stat lines, the data sheets, sometimes they're updated. They're updated with new point costs. But if there's a errata for the stratagems or for the characters, not all that comes across. It's like my overlords, my Necron overlords still say the old "my will be done" thing, where I reduce the stratagem's cost to 0 instead of by -1. Which changed in the recent errata for Prior Nexus.
Yep.
So it's like, and I feel that since the official Games Workshop app or platform, it should be in their best interest. They should have the ability to make those changes because they can change the points just fine. So, like, when they get something gets a codex and then there's FAQ after it, I want to see more engagement in that front where it's more. I don't want to have to remember and reference like 2 or 3 or 4 different supplements just to get the correct rules for my army.
Want to know what I want?
What's that? What you got?
And this is, I've thought about this long and hard. Codexes should have 2 things in them.
Mm-hmm.
At the very back of the book should be a code that I put into Warhammer Armory, Warhammer 40k,
Mm-hmm.
and it gives me access to all the data sheets, stratagems, enhancements, everything that is, as you said, updated as per every errata.
Yeah, it's no brainer.
The rest of the book, lore. The book should not have any rules in it.
Okay.
It would. I think they'd be a little bit hard pressed to include more of that lore content in that case. Which
Well-
I'm all for.
Bring back lore from the old books.
Ooh,
Yeah.
Like, just because it's old doesn't mean it's wrong. I mean, if it's wrong, don't put it in. But
right. Yeah.
if it's still relevant, then just make it a compendium.
Yeah.
The reason I want that is because, as you said, books get outdated with errata. Their app can not.
Yeah.
They can choose to make their app relevant. And then what they do is, because the app costs money to use fully, if you put in a code, it should give you 12 months.
Okay. Sure, if they want to, if they need to monetize it for the service, yeah, that wouldn't be a bad idea.
It's monetized right now. If you want to use
Yeah. It's like $60.
the Battleforge Beyond 3 Army List or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
You have to subscribe to Warhammer Plus.
Oh,
And so
I realize now I'm spoiled.
they've wrapped a lot of things into Warhammer Plus.
I didn't realize that's why I had. I'm sorry for my my pretentious position, guys. I didn't realize I was enjoying all these benefits with that because of Warhammer Plus.
To me, and this is where, like, maybe 12 months is a lot, or maybe they need to find a way to allow you to use the armory for free, and the code just gives you the access to your army. But there should be a code that lets me use updated rules, and the book shouldn't have to be brought to the table.
Yeah, I mean, I still bring it to the table. It's
They're halfway there with the armory, with the Battleforge. They're
Yeah.
halfway there, but it needs to be kept updated, and then they can get rid of the stuff in the book.
Yeah.
And when stuff like that goes, you know what they can do? Change the release schedule.
To be
Well,
like
Yeah.
no. So when codexes are now just lore and not rules as well,
mm-hmm.
it doesn't matter if the Space Marines get all their chapters released at once,
Okay.
because you don't need to have a supplement book. It doesn't need to exist. What they come out with is an update to the Blood Angel rules that they finally get looked at.
Yeah.
And so when you buy your Space Marine Codex book, it has all the lore you need. Because, like, right now, I have a Space Marines 10th edition Codex supplement Dark Angels.
Yes.
I can't play Dark Angels with that book.
Yep.
I need the Space Marine book.
Right.
So what is the point of that book?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, to give you access to the Dark Angel stuff.
Well,
But I can't play them.
it doesn't give you access.
It gives me access to the 6 or 7 units that they have, but you
Right.
can't make an army out of those units.
No. Marines, Space Marine players get kind of double whammy there every edition, eh?
Oh yeah.
Jeez.
If you're a fan of the Blood Angels, the Dark Angels, at one point the Ultramarines, the Iron Fists, the White Scars, you're screwed. They're milking.
Iron Hands, anything.
Whew. Yeah, I've been spoiled, I guess. Jeez.
And like you see, they've gone too far in some regards. The Harlequins have been gutted since they lost their codex.
They deserve it.
Yeah. They deserve it. And like a couple of months or weeks ago, or a couple months ago now, I think, when they finally fixed the Adeptus Mechanicus codex by releasing a gigantic errata for points and datasheet changes. It's like I hope those changes were reflected in the app, or else I have to bring pages and pages of errata when I go play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to sum up everything for Mr. Chris, who's back now, the 10th edition has made things a lot nicer, and we'd all like to see their app be better supported.
Yes.
I just like to see them embrace digital distribution.
Yeah.
So my Christmas wish list for Games Workshop was that the codexes have 2 things in them. The first is at the back page, a code you put into your app, and you get access to those rules that are updated at the moment that the erratas drop, and there you go. The other thing, that the codex is just a storybook.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can hear all about that on our podcast, if you want to go and take a listen to it later.
Can I throw out a wild take here that not a lot of people are probably going to agree with?
What?
I don't like codexes.
Damn.
Like as
So
in
would
physical
you
books, or
do-
the concept
No,
of a
the
separate...
concept of updating armies and changing them entirely.
Well,
how they play. I understand growth and new things need to happen for the game to survive. But like what we were talking about earlier, like the armies that don't have codexes, they're right where they need to be. They're anywhere from 50 to 53, 54% win rates
But
because they're good at what they do.
But this is something that is unique to 10th.
That's true.
Because when
10th is
10th
the first
dropped,
time that non-codex armies have been even good.
No. This is the first time there's such thing as a non-codex army.
Oh, that's right. They always just use the old codex.
If you played in 9th edition before your codex came out, you were using an 8th edition army.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
And as someone who played Astra Militarum, and their codex was the second last one to exist, I played all of 9th with an 8th edition army.
Yeah, how many months was the 9th edition codex for Astra Militarum even useful?
Like 6, maybe?
Yeah.
Come on, Waves Workshop.
So I do like the idea, Nate, and I'd like to see that when they drop the 11th edition, they get index armies and they move towards that. But yeah, for the first time, like this is the first time where that could be a thing, because like I said, prior to 10th, if you used an old or a non-codex army, you're using rule set from the 8th.
Yeah. So my main issue is like they take what an army is good at and they almost seemingly like they just try to gut it and make it so you have to play the armor in a different way or you won't succeed. Like Death Guard, I'm like whenever that eventually comes out, I am very curious to see what they're going to do with it. Because I feel like it's not going to be at all the same army that it was before their codex.
The gap between your experience with codexes for armies that you've played in 10th and what the normal codex experience is,
I know it's very limited.
Well, it's wider than you think. So okay, I'm going to show my age a little bit here. When we started playing back when I was a teenager, we started playing in it was like 3rd or 4th edition. I don't even remember. And I remember literally nothing of it. What I do remember is coming back to the game in 7th edition as an adult, and getting into 7th edition with my brothers before anybody else in my circle had sort of picked it up. Because I think it was with 8th edition that you and I started talking about 40K, right, Coda?
Yes.
Yeah. And that experience going from 7th to 10th edition, so 4 editions net total, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think the core rules have gone really far in favor of playability. I think they've lost a lot of the granularity that made certain, and from a competitive standpoint, I'm sure they're worse. But the granularity with the technical rules of, like, you know, armor size or different armor values for vehicles and weapon facing cones and even, you know, scatter dice and blast weapons and that kind of stuff. That granularity, I think the better way to phrase it is going from 7th to 8th, it felt to me like the game lost a lot of its character because everything felt very samey all of a sudden. And then as I sort of adjusted to how much easier it was not having to have the core book open at all times through all of 8th, I realized why they had changed what they changed, and I've come to sort of, you know, I don't miss scatter dice so much. I mean, I didn't really miss scatter dice in the first place, let's be honest, but they served a necessary purpose with blast templates. It feels like the core rules, and I'll agree with Limerick's statement, the core rules are probably in their most solid state that they've ever been with 10th edition. Army rules, I like the indexes. I like codexes because I think on paper, the idea of a codex is it's supposed to present to you alternate ways to play the army. What I think needs to change with the game, and I sort of spoke to this earlier when I had joined in, is they need to embrace the digital side of the hobby, I think, a lot more than they already have. But they need to embrace it in a way that makes sense for people. So I think codexes should, like Limerick said, be art and lore books, right? You buy it if you want something pretty to look at. I think what they need to do is when they release an edition, so assuming they start this for 11th edition, okay, they need to focus on digital rules. So you can buy a core rule book and it has the core rules in it, or you can spend a third to a half of the price on the digital rules, right? Mm-hmm. And for forever and always, the basic rules PDF needs to be free, but the basic rules PDF is 3 pages and my core rule book is like 150 pages.
Yeah.
And so that core rule book still needs to exist because I still like the idea of physical books, but you need to be able to buy the entire core rules side of things if that is even necessary. But I think the core rules should arguably be free and on the app. Okay. So we're talking about doubling down on the app right now.
Yeah.
Then the indexes all need to be free, right? Every army has a free index detachment. All of those are in the app and available as PDFs for those who don't want an app, right?
Yeah, that's the thing.
Then when an army gets their codex, they need to release a $10 army supplement or whatever the fuck you want to call it in the app that is however many additional detachments, and the index detachment stays free forever. Because that's my other issue with the way codexes are being handled, is that the index detachment is no longer available and is therefore removed. If you're talking about even just from an accessibility standpoint, if there is forever and always one detachment for every army that is freely available to anyone who wants to play, and they can make edits to it, it's all digital. You don't have to have 7 different PDFs that you're referencing back to. The digital rules need to be maintained as they do these competitive patches, which again is a fairly new thing, and oh boy, do I love that. But digitize this, right? Stop making me look in 4 different places for things. I should be able to go to the app and get everything that I need for my 1 free detachment and my free core rules just there, right?
Yeah.
And if I very specifically want to play Null Maiden Vigil for Custodes, I buy the $10 Custodes unlock in the app, and then I've got the other, whatever it is, 3 Custodes detachments.
My counter argument to that, I agree with 98% of what you say. My argument to the $10 codex boost or whatever, unlock, open door, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, detachment or whatever.
I think that alienates people further.
Well, I don't think it alienates them further than what they're doing now. As soon as an army gets a codex, you can't look at them on the app. Like, you can look and see the pictures of the models.
Yeah.
As soon as you click on them, you can't see anything.
Yeah, the rules are entirely gated.
Right, and that matters for people who, like us, play online and need the rules, but don't have the book. And while that's a growing part of the community, it's still a small one. Let's be real. But what I mean by that is now I have to buy the rules for my army and the lore separately.
But only if you want the lore.
But who doesn't? Like that is the nice thing about the codex now.
I need you to appreciate that there is a large percentage of the player base that doesn't. And particularly for new players that don't want to have their rules gated behind a $60 book, of which they're not going to use 40 or at least 40% of.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the lore behind 95% of the armies. And even the ones I do know some of the lore for, I probably don't know probably 85% of the important stuff.
It's worth stating that I don't think that the lore is worthless in any way, shape, or form. I think that 40K's lore is rich and it's complex and it's in-depth and it's great and people should engage with it. And there is a notable percentage of the player base that could not care less about the lore. They want their cool little soldiers. They want them to behave the way that they want them to behave, and they just want to know how to get them on the table and play.
Army men. Yeah,
maybe.
But like, I'm not. The codexes should be cheaper than they currently are because there's going to be less of them. The rules should be digital. The rules should be digital distribution, not just because that's the way that the hobby is going and the way that, sort of people are engaging with the rules side of things, but because I think they make more money. I think more people buy the rules versus just pulling PDFs off the internet. That's the other thing. The army maker in their app needs to be free, like not just limited to one list, because that is the stupidest decision I've ever heard.
Yeah, Mark.
Yeah, I didn't realize. Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't realize this entire time, Snowy. I just thought that everyone had access to all the armors they want.
No,
because I have a Warhammer Plus subscription when I bought my codex, so I just thought this was normal. But apparently, I'm fucking privileged as hell.
Yeah, no, you are limited to one army list, and if you don't buy the codex, which you have to buy a $60 book to get a digital code to put into the app, which is so dumb. If you don't buy the codex, then your free list, because the detachment gets paywalled as soon as the index detachment gets paywalled as soon as the codex comes out, you lose the ability to engage with the app. They are actively pushing people off the app.
Hold on. Are we sure on that?
I'm 100% sure.
Positive, because I had a list.
For what army?
Custodes.
I had a list for the Custodes.
The Custodes index detachment does not exist technically.
Correct. So when
this is what I'm saying is there an army out there where the index detachment hasn't been touched?
What's the?
Because I know Gladius has.
Because by name, the Custodes detachment still exists.
Right, but they changed it to be the what was it? They did change it because it got worse, and that's why everybody was upset. They're like, "You gave us crappy detachments
they-
and made the good one
Shield, are you
worse."
They
talking about the
changed the
shield host
rules.
attachment?
Yeah,
Yeah. Like right now on the app, I can go look at like Chaos Titans, and all the rules are there because it's an index.
So, what was the name of the Sisters Index detachment?
Oh, actually, wait a minute. Hold on. Is there? No, never mind. This is the Combat Patrol. I'm done. Beats me.
I mean, I don't know. I just know I had I had a custodies list as soon as the detachment came out. It got basically took it away because I couldn't interact with it.
no,
And
and
then I had a
and I'm not saying that's right. I'm wondering if the idea behind that isn't necessarily that they're pushing people away. It's that when a detachment changes, it technically stops being an index detachment.
Mm.
And
But the name, but this is part of what I'm arguing is that index detachment should forever and always remain free to access.
That'll be nice.
well, you
I have to. Sorry, I have a sick kid and a sick wife, so I have to sort of emergency BRB. 1 second.
Oh, this poor man.
and he's not wrong. I mean, I get what he's saying. I think it was an unintended incident less than a decision to push away.
Yeah, I get that.
I can
And a
I can understand that from like a company wide like
Oh yeah.
pushing
want you
something
to-
out like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know.
Yeah, it'll players will just have to adapt otherwise, and just seek out the information online, and they'll find it.
And that's not what Games Workshop wants. They're very IP
Right.
protective. So
Yeah.
First off, for a company that is so IP protective, I'm surprised that they're not better at adapting shit that other people do.
Yeah.
Like Battlescribe, New Recruit,
Mhm.
all that's out there. Why is there
Unofficial
Warforged?
Warhammer. Yeah.
Why is there Warforged so behind?
Yeah, I agree. It's very narrow. Like even just playing on the app, because we talked about boarding actions like a week or two ago. I can't make a boarding actions list on the app. I don't know if the boarding actions book has a code with it or anything, but
Nope.
my only options are Incursion, Strike Force, Onslaught. I can't make a boarding action list at
No,
all.
you can't.
And that's just like regular units, mostly the same data sheets as like 40k.
It's all the same data sheets.
There's like some stuff that's like taken off.
No, so what it is the way they word it, or the way it works. It's all the same data sheets.
Yeah.
What ends up happening is certain abilities get taken away in your detachment.
Yeah.
So it's a detachment rule that takes the ability away.
And like I would love a format in the app, something that would show me which ones are taken off easily, so I don't have to reference it all the time. But in any case, I feel bad for Chris. Chris is missing our podcast right now.
It happens. Without him here, though, I do want to sort of segue into my next point.
Yes, we can get to the
Since everybody's here except Chris.
yes.
We don't need him.
I'm the competitive person.
Mhm.
That's my job on this podcast.
Yes.
I do enjoy the competitive scene.
I bow before you.
But please don't. Rise, lowly human. No. But I understand that this is a hobby that turns competitive, not the other way around. So, my question I pose to you guys, and I'll pose it to Chris when he gets back.
Yes.
The factions we play are important. They're flavorful. They determine really how almost our community sees us. You see a person who plays Ultramarines, and the very first thing you think of is, oh, Smurf. You see someone who plays Night Lords, and you're like, Edgelord, I get it. That it's for better or worse. Our factions and our armies are supposed to be, I'll say, table representatives of what we want them to be, right?
Right.
Sometimes that's hard for people to get into. Like, there's 24 factions. Each one has detachments and models galore. And where do you start?
Lots of shiny.
So the question I pose to you guys, I've never seen this game before, never played, but I have money I'm willing to burn and effort and time. what army should I build first? And like I'm talking faction, detachment, model range. I don't need you to give me a 2,000 point list, but I want an army that, you know, should be fun to paint on average. Uh, should net me some equal wins and losses, and you know, has some appeal.
Yeah. I did some brain thinking, some racking it up, and I considered. My answer might not surprise anybody here, but I did I did settle on Necrons, and I'll explain why. My reasoning, when as a newcomer to 40k, I think that a lot of the initial stuff in your face is Space Marines, Ultramarines, Boys in Blue, all that kind of thing, and Space Marines have I think the largest array of models in there to choose from. Then their rules can be pretty complicated. So I kind of use it as a baseline and went with, I think a new player would have a nice mix and balance of collecting, building, and playing using a Necron's army based on the Awakened Dynasty detachment. Which is really it's good for a number of reasons. Awakened Dynasty just simply says if a unit is being led by a character, whenever that unit shoots, add 1 to the hit roll, which right there, that's all it is basically, but it's pretty impactful, and it lets you start thinking about, like, hey, what are characters, what are units, what can I attach them to? And it starts like the whole critical thinking process of how I can mix and match some of my units. And plus, the Awakened Dynasty detachment, the 6 stratagems you get access to in 10th edition, none of those stratagems gatekeep you from using them on any units. Like, so how certain stratagems say you only use this on a vehicle, or you only use this on like a Praetorian model, that kind of thing. The 6 in Awakened Dynasty can be used on any unit in the Necron's army. So even if you have just like whatever you can scrape together for models that are already built or painted from your friends or whatever, you can field them and they will get value for whatever you pick. Whereas, if I choose another detachment with, that needs keywords for Destroyer Cult, and I have no Destroyer Cult units, then it's useless detachment. I shouldn't take it. Awakened Dynasty, as baseline, easy to follow, army rule, and it applies to everything. So you'll get some value there. Another thing, Necron models are very forgiving to paint. They are super simple to look great or just good enough, really. Space Marines, as a side-by-side comparison, I don't think I could ever comfortably paint a Space Marine to be good enough. There's so much detail work, so much edging, so much highlighting. Necrons, you need a black base coat, lead belcher, Runelord brass, and then whatever color you want for your flare. And just dump a bunch of Nuln Oil on it, and it looks amazing. Those cracks and crevices, put black, it's all gray, it's great. You don't need to worry about all this crap. And it kind of ties into also Necrons, for their data sheets, have maybe one choice or 1 or 2 choices for weapon profiles. Whereas right now, Space Marines, if you do a regular squad of, intercessors or what have you, there's like 4 or 5 different options for like guns to put them on. And you have to, you have an upgrade sprue and all that stuff. You put on the models. You want it to look how it looks accurately. That's fine. Necrons have maybe one other choice of gun, and with how extra equipment is in this edition, you just stick them all on there and it looks great. You don't have to worry about it. There's less choice there, and everything is still, still comparable in terms of power and toughness. Well, I had notes here. Oh god, no. So weapon profiles. Their model range is really decent. It's diverse. It's one of the more popular like Xenos / antagonist armies. They've been a number of box sets that are now floating around, so there's definitely a lot of available model range to pick up, just even secondhand. And the model range is really diverse. Space Marines. I keep comparing Space Marines. Most people's first idea of 40k Space Marines. You could have an entire army of Space Marines that's just you have like maybe 10 different units, and they all look like a normal Space Marine as a silhouetted figure. This guy's got a big gun. This guy's got different armor. they all look very much the same, I think, and I would burn out very quickly on painting those. Necrons have a lot of really interesting, different, diverse profiles for their model range. Their vehicles are really unique. Their warriors are really cool. And I just think that from painting and assembling perspective, that kind of mitigates the paint fatigue a bit, because it's always interesting whenever you're building. Like, a wraith is really similar to a spider, but they're both so different in the way that they're posed that I personally don't think that a new player would get as tired of making them. And to kind of top it all off, the army rule of reanimation, I know it can be kind of annoying to play against, where right now, at the beginning of my turn, my command phase, I bring back some of my models to the table from any units that are missing some. That is a really great for beginners that have, it's one of their first kind of couple games. They put a lot of time and effort into making and painting their models. They get that extra opportunity to keep playing with those models that they get that, other armies would not necessarily get. It's like, oh, I just built this unit of like amazing Centurions or amazing Terminators, and before they even got to go, I lose half of them. And that's a big feels bad moment in my book. Whereas for Necrons, I may get to bring some of them back before they all go away, which I think is a really nice way to incentivize the new player to commit to an army. Like, you will get to almost guaranteed, get to use some or most of the models you play with during the game. So overall, my vote would be Awakened Dynasty Necrons. Just how baseline, not too confusing, it's really forgiving, and the rules themselves are decently straightforward. My opinion.
I like that.
I understand. I did some research. I understand maybe Custodes, you have less data sheets to worry about, but they have some confusing stuff.
Yeah, no, I get that.
The only reason I wouldn't recommend Custodes is because, from a rule standpoint, they're very like hot or cold. Like, I don't know that I've ever seen Custodes be sort of like middle of the range.
No,
Yeah.
they're either top dog or they're bottom of the trash heap.
Yeah, and I feel like Necrons have kind of stayed middle range, maybe a little bit up for, bouncing around different editions and data sheets.
It's so cute that you didn't play 8th edition.
I'm sorry.
Ironically, the reason I wouldn't tell anybody to go Custodes has nothing to do with how they play. Gold is such a hard color to accent.
Yep.
Yeah, I fucking bet. It's like, I would literally, like...
To paint it, not bad. Like, you could even freaking spray paint it, and because it's largely all one color.
Mhm.
But then to do the filigrees and all that, to get highlighting so that...
Oh, yeah.
It's not even... So, you got to be bad to get good, right? Like, it is a talent you learn. But it is so hard to even be bad at highlighting gold, because there's just so many places or so many ways for it just not to do anything. You put a lighter gold over a gold, and because of how metallic paints work, you might not notice it and think you're done, or think that, well, okay, it doesn't do anything. No, it just needs 8 layers. Like, it's such a difficult paint scheme.
Yeah. And like, Necrons come out of the fucking ground. So if your model looks terrible and dirty, it's all on flavor.
It's more accurate.
It's so forgiving.
I'm gonna let Pilch do his next, because I kind of want to save mine and go last.
Oh.
Pilch
Yo, I got
has-
6, so buckle up.
6
Oh.
recommendations. Bitch.
Nice.
I don't have 6.
I'm also afraid of Oath of Moment, so there's that.
I did have a really hard time with this question, though. If anybody listening doesn't know, I have a really hard time sticking with an army. I think I've gone through 10 or 11 different, probably half the armies you could play. I've went through them since I've started playing. And I only started, I want to say, what was this night? Probably like 4 or 5 months before 10th came out, or was it a little longer?
No, you were like a month and a half before 10th, because you got
Yeah,
into it
okay.
because 10th was coming, and it was supposed to be the most new player-friendly edition ever.
Right. That's right.
Yep.
So I was gonna go Custodes for this, and then I would have picked Custodes if it was pre-Codex, regardless if they were bottom of the trash heap or really good.
Sure.
Because I do think there is still some merit to Custodes, whether or not their win percentages are awful. You can still win with Custodes against certain armies. It's a completely matchup dependent when it comes to that for them, in my opinion. I thought about Death Guard, but I don't think they're a super new player friendly, just with how many different things they have going on all at once that you have to remember and try to capitalize on. I still have issues with them, and they're probably probably my most played army. I still have issues remembering things, and I had to make myself a checklist, and I still forget things. So, what I actually ended up deciding on, I decided on Tyranids, and I decided on 2 detachments. Now, this is completely from my own personal opinion. I don't enjoy 4 of the detachments they got with their codex, and they all have to do with basically like a horde style Tyranid army. The 2 that I enjoy are Crusher Stampede and Invasion Fleet. My favorite is Crusher Stampede. A caveat to that, it is the worst detachment by far for all of the detachments for Tyranids.
Yeah.
But I still have success with the detachment when I play it. It all depends. This detachment, you have to really. It's a lot of give and take. I want to say you have to fine tune your lists to make them work. I really enjoy the big creatures from Tyranids, so I try to shove as many big monsters into my list as I can, and then if I have room, I throw in chaff. I really like to play with mid-board control and trying to hold objectives, and just by pure force moving people off the board.
Okay.
I still maintain that Crusher Stampede has arguably the easiest fix of any like not good detachment right now. Literally all they have to do is make either Carnifexes or Tyranid Warriors a troop, like a battle line choice, and instantly it's good.
Yep. So Crusher Stampede, basically, it only affects Tyranid monsters, which is, I'd say, roughly 60-70% of the Tyranid Codex. It's basically, you add 1 to the hit roll of a Tyranid monster model if it's below its starting strength. Or, sorry, it's add 1 to the hit roll if it's not below its starting strength. If it's below its starting strength, you also add 1 to the rune roll. And now, if you are at your starting strength, because they buffed it because it was awful before, it adds 2 to the objective control of the models. So something that would say a Norn emissary without the objective control buff, it would be, instead of I think 6 or 4, I think it's 6 now. It just makes the army harder to play against, because if you don't, you really want to focus fire this army down.
Emissary
but
is
it's
5
really
to 7.
5 to 7. Okay. But when you try to do that, it makes it a lot harder now, because ones that are full health, it's going to be really hard to get them off of the objective and take control of it, because they have a higher OC now. You can't just focus fire one thing down at a time like you used to with this detachment. It makes it more difficult to play against for sure.
It's worth noting too that like that OC improvement that they've given them plays really nicely with a few of the Tyranid shenanigans, specifically the Norns, with their singular purpose. While they're on their chosen objective, their base OC jumps to 15, which then becomes 17, which I think makes them the highest OC single unit in the game.
Oh,
Yeah,
God.
yeah, and it makes them very, very hard to take off of the objective.
Yeah,
and even if you get onto the objective, you're most likely not taking over the objective with your OC, because the Norn's big enough as it is. It's gonna be hard to fit 17, or 17 plus OC onto that objective while he's on it.
Well, and like Norns, if you pick an objective for their singular purpose, they have a 5-up Feel No Pain, which improves to 4-up against mortals, a 4-up in Vuln save, on a model that is T11 with a 2-up save and 16 wounds.
Yeah. They're very hard to kill and very hard to get rid of. And that's what I like. That's what I like about the Crusher Stampede is I bring a lot of really hard target monsters that are hard to kill. Because like what Mark was saying, I don't like bringing a bunch of chaff
Yeah.
and then accidentally misstepping, and you can see a quarter of a model's base that's tucked behind a wall. But since you can see that one part of that model, a blast weapon takes out 85% of my chaff unit, and it's basically a waste.
Or, you know, back before I switched to Chaos Knights, it was, the Hearthguard can see them.
Yeah.
This is why
Yeah.
I much play boarding actions.
But this is entirely a me thing. I think there is absolutely you'll win, you'll lose. It all depends on the matchup. This army really struggles against hard stat check armies. Like Snowy, he plays Chaos Knights, and literally the only thing in my army that can kill him is a Tyrannifex. And so if he just focus fires my Tyrannifex, I really don't have enough anti-tank, or in that case, enough chaff units to whittle him down.
Mm-hmm.
So there are just some hard counters to this army. I won't say there's not. But you still have a really good chance against things that aren't just hard stat checking you. And in a lot of cases with armies that bring a lot of chaff, you're the one stat checking them. So it all depends.
I was going to say, I think there are exactly 2 factions that actually stat check a Crusher Stampede.
Yeah.
And you have the unfortunate circumstance of playing regularly against one of them.
Yeah.
Probably both of them.
Yeah. I got to take a grain of salt when I play against Snowy because his army is very unique in that sense. I don't
even run a
enjoy
competitive
playing.
list.
He doesn't. Yeah. If he ran the competitive list, I wouldn't have a chance. But
I have to wonder how World Years would go into Crusher.
You guys should find out.
I think that would be a pretty good game. I think World Eaters would probably. I don't know. I think it would depend on a couple things, for sure.
I think much like many World Years games, it depends on can I hide long enough to swing first.
Right.
Yeah. And that's almost how you kind of want to play this as well. You don't want to set everything out up on the front and then get blasted off the table, turn 1. Because if you do that, you lose. Let's say I lose a Norn somehow in the first turn before he gets to his objective, because at that point he doesn't have his upgraded Feel No Pain and his increased defenses. If he gets blown off the table, that's probably 5th or 6th of like a 2,000 point list. I'd be in a big disadvantage if that were to happen.
Yep, you've got to use terrain properly.
Yeah, it's a very swingy army. You either steamroll somebody or you usually get steamrolled. Now, I understand losing and getting steamrolled is frustrating, but when you steamroll people, it feels oh so good.
Or you're just terrible. It's like if it's like a little kid or something.
Yeah. I also think it's a pretty beginner friendly army because the detachment rule is really straightforward. The stratagems are really straightforward. The one issue with the detachment, if you do bring more chaff than I would normally bring, none of the stratagems will affect like the small units, like gargoyles or termagants or hormagaunts, like little battle line chaff unit. They don't affect them because they're all Tyranid monster keyword stratagems, which is that's the point of the it's the point of the arm or point of the detachment.
Right.
But in a real life sense, for painting, I don't have a good grasp on if they would be easy to paint. I think if you really wanted to get very intricate and very detailed on like like in between their bone plating, like they have their like they have like the fleshy bits in between all the bone plating. If you wanted to get very intricate, I think it would be very difficult to paint if you were doing a more horde style army. But I think with a Crusher Stampede list, I think my list consisted of like 11 different models. I think it would be a lot of fun to take your time on each one and make them look really good. And you really wouldn't need to do a lot of chaff painting, at least with my Crusher Stampede list.
I will counterpoint you a little bit on that one as one of the two somewhat aggressive painters. If you're a beginning painter and you just want to get your Tyranids on the table, you could paint up a Tyranid monster that would look probably 75-80% as good as the ones in the store with one rattle can and 3 paint pots.
Yes.
Yeah.
Contrast paints work amazing on Tyranids.
Yeah,
Yeah.
lots of big flat surfaces, lots of nooks and crannies. Literally, you're gonna do so. Like I have a picture of a Norn assimilator pulled up, which I'm gonna grab and I'm gonna put into the chat for the YouTube podcast. For the Spotify listeners, this is Pilch's favorite monster. It's a big monster. He's got lots of flat surfaces and lots of recesses. There's the paint job on these on the store is phenomenal. I recommend Googling Norn Emissary, Norn, if you want to see this guy.
I believe we're looking at the assimilator though.
No, this one's the Emissary. The Emissary is the psychic one. The assimilator has the toxic harpoons coming out of the chest.
You're right. Yep.
So looking at this guy, all of the dark purple armor plates. So you would base coat this guy in Wraithbone because that gives a more organic bend to any colors that you put on top of it. You're gonna put like, I don't know what the darker purple color is called. The purple that I have that's a very bright purple is Shyish purple, I think is what it's called. There are several like darker purple. Oh, I have Magos purple. I think this is actually a darker one. So you can find a darker purple contrast. You're going to hit all of the armor plates with the Magos purple and it'll self-shade. So it's going to look phenomenal with all of those little cracks and cuts that are in the armor plates. You're going to hit all of the bone plates with basically just a pink wash. So you're going to grab, what is the color? Exploit range. Let's see. Where is technicals? Thank you, Citadel Paint website, for being awful. Hang on. Well, so the problem is if you Google Citadel Paint, they take you to the like, it's essentially a splash page. But it just is like, this is all the cool things that our paints can do. And I'm like, that's not helpful. Technical paints.
Anyways, it would be very easy to do, I think, is the idea that you're getting at.
Very simple. Yeah. You get 2 or 3 of the right paints. If you are talking to somebody who knows what they're doing in the hobby, they know somebody at the bare minimum who knows which paints you need. And you will have a good looking Tyranid army with minimal effort. It is not that hard to do.
There you go, folks.
All
Easy
of that
to do.
All of that being said, I'm gonna disagree with everything that's been said here because that's all the best content, as we all know.
Oh my god. All right.
And I'm gonna say that the first purchase that anybody that's new to the 40K hobby should make is Tabletop Simulator.
Okay, buddy.
I maintain that telling somebody who's new to the hobby to pick an army is doing them a disservice. I know that's not the question, which is why I'm being a bit of a putz about this, but
I would have fucking said that.
Tabletop Simulator. Now, if I'm put in a position where my friend is like, nope, I'm buying models. I need you to help me pick models because, let's say we want to, you're going to a tournament in 6 months and I want to bring models along too. I'm like, damn it. Okay. Then I would actually suggest Chaos Space Marines using the Veteran of the Long War detachment. Veterans of the Long War.
Wait a minute.
Chaos
Space Marines terrible with trim.
I would like to point out two things. One, I'm the first person that has not recommended an army that I play, so get bent.
Oh my god.
Hey, buddy.
And two, at no point was I told that this new list for this new player has to be like tournament competitive. It just has to be able to hold its own in casual games.
Exactly.
Veterans of the Long War is arguably the simplest detachment ability, or the simplest detachment that is still usable and performs pretty much regardless of what models you want to buy. Because all it does is you pick an enemy unit that you don't like, and until the end of that, and so at the start of every turn in your command phase, you pick an enemy unit that you don't like, and every Heretic Astartes in your army that attacks that target rerolls hits. That's it. It's simple, it's straightforward, it's easy enough to play. So they don't have to have a list of all of this stuff that they need to worry about, and it doesn't matter which models they've decided they want to get, which is good because I think from a player standpoint, the Chaos Space Marines have they have the widest and shallowest pool of viable units to bring, where we can talk about things like the Necrons that have like one or two weapon options. Chaos Space Marines still have that, but their individual troop choices are quite a bit more durable than Necrons, reanimation protocols notwithstanding. You've got access to good survival stratagems with whatever their version of Armor of Contempt is. You've got some strategic plays that you can do with whatever that ability is where they sometimes hurt themselves, but they get to be more scarier.
Dark Pact.
Dark Pact, that's the one. So you've got Dark Pacts that let you play offensively if you want to. You play really aggressively. You've got things like Vindicator tanks that are the safest tank in the game, basically, because they can still fire their very scary big blast weapon in melee. So it's not even like you can shut them down by charging them. They are still going to blow you off the table. They are fast when they need to be. They are tough when they need to be. You've got choices. And I think choice is the single best thing that you can offer a new player, particularly choice that is sort of equally viable across the board, right? I look at Tyranids and I look at what you're saying, Pilf, where you're like, don't bring any of these chaff units. And it's like, well, okay, but you need chaff to screen sometime. And I look at
I agree.
the Necrons and Necron vehicles. Some of my favorite Necron models are by and large just kind of worthless. Monoliths aren't any good. Triarch Stalkers haven't been seen in God knows how long. Doom Scythes are just free points for the enemy.
Yes.
And so you're still pointing new players towards army lists where it's like, well, yeah, you can play this, but you still have to play it the right way. Chaos Space Marines, if you bring them to a casual game at your local friendly game store, it really doesn't matter what you bring. You're at least going to put up a fight. And so you're not ever going to get out and out steamrolled unless you're playing somebody who you should not be playing as a new player.
Yeah.
All right, not bad. I understand.
Okay, I like that. That's good. That's
Okay.
the tabletop simulator thing had me a bit worried at the top, but I can't even disagree with that.
Yep.
Like this bitch.
So, my question for you, or I guess my statement, because I thought about this too. I can't ask you guys to do it and not do it myself.
Right.
Right.
We have to know what the right answer is, Limerick.
Well, I don't think
Yeah.
there is a right answer because
Yeah,
it does really depend on. Like
There's
you
a right
said,
answer in its tabletop simulator. God damn it.
Shut up.
No, because tabletop simulator doesn't do one thing.
Huh.
You can't
can't.
paint it.
I can't put the models in my mouth, Snow.
No, you can't paint it. And I'm sorry, there has been plenty of armies that I've gone, this would be so sweet, and then went to paint one of the models and went, hell no.
Yeah. Which I should emphasize that another part of my disagreement with this question from like sort of a fundamental standpoint is that rules are temporary and models are forever. So don't pick your army based on what is like competitively viable now.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I said I'd get you even amounts of wins and losses, because if it's your first army, you don't want to lose all the time, no matter how cool your army is.
No, I get where you tried to sort of soften that blow, but if you're out there and you're listening to this and you're like, I need to figure out what army I'm going to buy and I'm going to let these idiots tell me. One, you're wrong. Please stop. Two, don't pick your armies based on rules. Legitimately, pick what you think are the coolest models and then find people to play with who won't aggressively steamroll you with weird meta lists.
Yeah.
So, I thought about this long and hard.
Oh boy.
I too am going to suggest a army that I do not play.
I should hope so, because I know the armies you play, and boy, oh boy, you suggest either of those is going to shout you down.
Please be Necrons. Please be Necrons.
So, the army I suggest falls under the Space Marine category.
Fuck.
It's actually the Blood Angels.
Mm.
Guys,
And
I find Oath of Moment so confusing.
the detachment rule, or the detachment that I'd suggest, is actually the Red Thirst, the Sons of Sanguinius.
Oh.
The reason I state this. So, Oath of Moment, the army rule, allows you to pick a target and reroll any, much like the Veterans of the Long War. In fact, Veterans of the Long War is just a dark Oath of Moment.
Yeah.
You can pick a target, reroll all your hit rolls against that target. Sons of Sanguinius Red Thirst is after a charge is made, you add 2 to your strength characteristic and 1 to your attack. Between those two things, you can run a melee army, or you can run a ranged army, or a mixed army. In fact, it helps mixed armies because you're rerolling your hits at range, and when you do have to get into melee, it doesn't matter there either because you're buffing your characters and your models. The reason I'm saying Blood Angels, and for a hobby perspective, Marines are nice to paint. Yes, they have edge work. Yes, they have detail. Yes, that they can be very intricate. And that's one of the reasons why I also suggested Blood Angels, is because they have some of the most intricate models available right now with their new line.
Mm-hmm.
But that is how you improve. You can't be good without being bad first. That is a statement I make to every painter I've talked to. So your very first the combat patrol that you buy, you spray paint them all red, you field them that way. There's your Blood Angel army. Then, when you decide that you want to take it on, you throw gold on the Aquilas. And then when you wanted to do some highlighting, now you highlight the edge work. It does not require... First off, none of these armies require you to sit down and spend 6 hours on a single model, every model.
No.
All these armies that I have heard proposed are armies that you can start at a 4-foot rule and move on, which for new players, the 4-foot rule is if you don't see the mistake from 4 feet away, it's not a mistake. Anybody who's closer than that to your models is doing something wrong.
I'm going to put it in my mouth.
Well, sorry, my flavored paints aren't in yet. I also think that Space Marines have, inarguably the largest line.
Yes.
You want melee Marines, Blade Guard, Assault jump pack guys, Assault regular guys, Terminators. It's a massive line. I don't think you can go wrong. And I don't think there's a single person on this planet who's interested in this hobby that can't find a model in the Space Marine line they like. It's just a good line.
It's also worth noting, because that was part of my decision to pick Chaos Space Marines too, that I'm willing to bet you that a measurable percentage, probably 70% at least, of people who are now suddenly becoming interested in Warhammer are at the bare minimum interested in Halo, Gears, or the Space Marine game.
Yeah.
Boys in blue.
And then from a lore perspective, I find the Blood Angels have something for everybody. They have the dark secret that I'm not going to ruin right now. They have the heroic side. They have the amazing Primarch. They have the lore that when you like the models enough to get into is there. Not that the other ones don't. I just find personally the Blood Angels to be so much more fascinating with their lore. They're not as every legion, every chapter is well-rounded. There's depth to lore there. You don't have to look so hard with the Blood Angels as you do with some of the other ones. the depth to it is obvious. And lastly, the reason that I suggested Blood Angels is they did just get a bunch of new updates.
This is true.
They got a bunch of new models. I don't think there's a bad model in their line right now. That's specifically theirs. So I mean, it's a good time to pick them up. Do I think, unless you are a Blood Angels player at heart, do I think you're going to stick with them? No, you'll probably decide that, hey, I really like melee, so I'm going to go World Eaters, or I'm going to go Black Templar. But the problem with those two armies is that they can't shoot to save their life.
I was going to say there's a tactical floor to playing them on the table.
Yeah. If you decide that you don't like melee, but you really like the tanks that you're bringing because Blood Angels can bring tanks, now you're spread off into other armies that specialize in tanks that don't have the safety of being a Space Marine. Space Marines of any flavor are the gateway drug to Games Workshop.
I suppose that makes sense.
I know everybody hates saying it, but the Ultramarines are the centerpiece for a reason. Space Marines might not be amazing at anything, but they will never be bad at anything either. They are the McDonald's of the Games Workshop world. Nobody goes to McDonald's and expects to have the best meal they've ever had, but one thing they know for certain is they're never going to have a disgusting meal.
Or that they're always going to have a disgusting meal and that's what they want.
But that's the thing. Like you know what you're getting out of it, and there's no surprises. Consistency is the Space Marine rule. I chose Blood Angels because I don't think another army provides both the melee and the range benefits as well as Blood Angels. And like I said, their lore just tickles my fancy. But as a World Eaters fanboy, that makes sense.
All right. I did not expect our all ranches to be so diverse, but there's a lot of good points raised.
Well, and I think this ties very nicely back to the topic at the top of the podcast. 10th edition is the best time to come into this hobby at a game level. I don't know, I don't think it's any better than it was in 8th or 9th when Primaris was introduced for hobby level. I think Primaris models changed the way that painters look at Space Marines now. Primaris models paint so much nicer than Firstborn. I'm sorry, it's just true.
I like Primaris more than Firstborn. I can hear the pitchfork starting already, but I absolutely do.
The hot takes keep on coming.
From a painting perspective, I'm sorry, scale models just make sense. From a rules perspective, we named 4 different armies, all of which play very differently, all of which in a casual setting will net you a fun game every time.
Yep.
Ain't that the truth?
And for me, I am a competitive person when it comes to this game. But that's because I have fun playing at the competitive level. If you don't have fun playing at the competitive level, don't be there.
Yeah.
Take this hobby as what it is, which is a community that loves its people and wants to have fun.
Oh, yeah. You're guaranteed to, and you always play against someone that's passionate about the game.
I have family members that do it just for lore. I have family members that do it just to paint. I have family members that have never walked into a hobby store, painted a model, or put together a model, never have thought about reading a codex, but have gone through all the Eisenhorn, all the Ravenor, and all the Beckwin series. Because those are books set in the Warhammer world that is the genre they love. And so this is the best time to play the game of 40K, but it will never be a bad time to have a hobby that is 40K.
Yeah.
I hope we're not eating our words in like 2 months from now or something.
Honestly, I kind of hope that we eat our words, because I agree that this is the best time to become a 40K fan from a rules standpoint. They really got to catch up on their delivery methods, which is what we were talking about.
But even then, from the way it has been, like, yes, I will fully agree. They are still Stone Age in their delivery methods.
Yeah.
But we're talking about a company that prior to COVID didn't have an app.
Yep. No,
Yeah.
I'm not saying they haven't come a long way. I just need them to take that like last step.
Like, come back.
Oh yes,
I will pay
but
you so much money.
and maybe it's something that we need to mention to our listeners too, since we do like the new people. This hobby gained a lot of traction during COVID, the dark days as I call them. So when you're looking at the community, it's very rare that the community that you're dealing with is older than 10 years old as a whole. You'll have people that have been playing this game forever,
Oh yeah.
but as a whole, most of the people in this community started less than 15 years ago. And
It's
that is
weird being
because
the old one in the hobby.
I'm
but
sorry.
it's true, and that's because prior to COVID, and I think in the grand scheme of things, I won't go too far, but prior to nerd things becoming cool, this was a very niche thing, and it still is, but people are starting to get traction on it.
Yep.
And while I gate kept at the beginning saying that the video games are not meant for new people, this community does not need to be gate kept. It has so much to be uh, sought for.
Oh yeah.
You know, if we can get the delivery methods right, if we can shore up some of the business side of things, or business consumer side of things,
Yeah.
I think that this has a lot going for it.
Yeah. Hell, even like my parents and my family who has no idea what any of this is about find it interesting enough to want to watch.
Yep.
Well, so like I said, my family members, my mom, who has zero interest in the tiny figures,
Yeah.
has zero interest in playing the game, has no idea what any of this is about,
Yep.
watched my tournament for 48 hours
Oh my god.
because it was streamed on Twitch, and she found it and watched it. She saw me only in the background like 6 times. She watched every game, or
That's
most of the
phenomenal.
games.
That's
really cool.
awesome. Yeah.
And so, and I think it's because really it is fascinating from an outsider perspective, because there is nothing like it. And I'm talking tabletop gaming in general.
Yeah.
Warhammer has a lot of competitors, which I'll say to have pluses and minuses of their own, but tabletop wargaming is is Wizard's chess.
Mm-hmm.
It is interactive, exciting chess.
Mm-hmm.
And
Breathe life.
well, and I think that people miss out on that when they look at it as something nerdy. But yeah, so to reiterate, go back, 30 minutes in this conversation. 4 armies completely different, placed completely different, look completely different, will paint completely different, all completely viable. And I bet you if we pulled another 4 people in, you'd have 8 armies that were completely different.
Yep.
I just want someone to agree.
I know for a fact nobody's picking Crusher Stampede.
But I could have easily have just said World Eaters and been like, you know what,
You
you're
just
going to
run
lose.
at them.
Yeah, you're going to lose some games because your only objective is to run at them.
Yeah.
And then the next game, you just run at them smarter.
Ain't that the truth?
But I from the new person's perspective, Blood Angels do that easier because I don't have to send everything down there.
Mm-hmm.
So
We're gonna get on top of this, guys. Yeah, if you're in the United States, call your local senator. Get them to get on the Game Workshop's ass. We're gonna fix this whole thing. You know, if you're in somewhere else, call the Queen or some shit. We'll get them on it.
The Queen.
I don't understand who at Games Workshop is so adamant about trying to force people into this Warhammer Plus sub.
Well, they probably make more money this way. They don't give a shit what people want.
I don't know that they do, because if you make the app easy to engage with, people are more likely to spend money to keep engaging with the app.
can I tell you what the problem probably is?
Mm.
You're talking about people who, to them, an app is a menu item.
Yeah, they don't see it as like the
No,
bones.
but I'm talking like, do we know for a fact that the creators of Games Workshop still aren't there? Like this game is like we might be new to it, but this game system as a whole has been around since the 60s.
Yeah.
The I think the problem that we're running into is just the fact that leadership at Games Workshop is old.
Damn, now we're never gonna get sponsored.
No, and I don't mean that negatively, because they've cared for it and stuff the best way they know how. But I think it has taken a lot of courage is the wrong word, but I'm using it, on their perspective to step past what they have known, to go to digital when to them digital is how you lose everything.
True.
You know, we're talking about a company that 5 years ago, um, digital was how you lost everything because there was PDFs of pictures of the codexes.
Right.
So now that they're even foraying into the fact that they're putting stuff out there, and like we see a huge turn with 10th edition saying, "Hey, all the rules for your army going to be free right off the bat."
Yeah.
And like, yes, they're clawing back on some of that, and I hate to see it. I do, but it's not like it's not like that's new. We're just going back to what was, and we had hoped it wasn't.
Yeah.
And
I will. So the moment that I had hope that this was going to change, and I'm disappointed that it hasn't, because it felt like it was heading in that direction, was when they started not just mocking the people that post those really low res leaked photos of things, but then immediately showing you the model, being like, well, it got leaked and we were going to save it for a cool event, but apparently you guys don't care. So here's Dante. Like,
remember when I broke Dante to us?
Yep.
Nope.
I was like, hey guys, there's a new Dante coming. That's because I read it on Reddit.
Yeah. It's
Like-
out there, man. You can't stop the signal.
Oh no, Games Workshop is a leaky ship because I think largely because their shipping is leaky. I don't
Yeah.
think anybody's leaking it from the inside. I think all their leaks come from the fact that they don't make anything.
Yeah.
They don't have plastic plants. They don't have publishers.
No, they do.
They
They make
do
their
they
own
now?
plastic. They've got 3 factories in Nottingham, and they just got approved for a development permit to either double the size of Factory 3 or build Factory 4. They make all
Okay,
their
well,
own plastic. Their printers, on the other hand,
were Chinese for a while. Now they're not.
yeah, which COVID also killed that. Which
Fuck you,
again,
Velvet.
start doing digital distribution because it just makes everybody's life easier, including you. Please, for the love of God.
We're gonna talk about this for like 90 years.
We are.
Well,
I mean, I
don't
hope
know.
we aren't, because
So, if the price point was higher, would you still want digital?
would define higher.
So let's say that they decide, okay, we can't give the rules away for $10 a pop. It's going to be the cost of a character, 40. And the idea behind that is we're just not churning out the rules as often, so it's a $40 investment for the entire edition.
I mean, if it
40's,
updates,
40's too much for a digital thing, in my opinion. I think I would pay, and again, there's some caveats on this, right? So if it was a case of hey, we've just dropped 11th edition, the core rules and 1 detachment for every army are free, and then you can pay, I would pay, and I have to like mentally convert numbers to American, because like what I would pay in Canadian is not, but I would pay probably $20 US for digital codex, essentially.
That's not far off what I said, because I didn't convert, but yes.
we pay $40 for characters down here anyway. I don't know what y'all pay.
But this is where like my headspace is at, is like, if it's all being dropped at the beginning of an edition and I can just buy it and I have it for the whole edition, sure. But if they continue with this stage codex release thing and I run the risk of spending $20 US on a codex that is only valid for 6 months, then no, you can get banned. You charge
But
more than $10 and we're gonna have a
Let's
problem.
use Waha.
You run that risk now.
which is part of why I don't love buying codexes. But this is what I'm saying, is that if GDub wants to sort of pull in the revenue stream, which is what they're trying to do, they're trying to encourage people to buy into their ecosystem, and essentially they're trying to pull an Apple on it, right? Like, once you're in the ecosystem, you're ours. We own you. But instead, people are like, well, I mean, there are Russian websites that publish everything you put out for free and you can't touch them because they're in Russia. There are community members that give me the bits and pieces that I need while skirting around copyright issues, and you can't touch them because they're anonymous. Why would I engage with your ecosystem beyond what is the bare minimum if you're going to make it hard to do, right? So if they take the step of making it so that you're not restricted on how many lists you can make on the app, or even if it's free, increase the limit to 5, right? Unlimited you pay for, you get 5 for free, because I guarantee you that storing like however many lines in an Excel file somewhere, they don't need you paying for storage space. It's just dumb. So give us 5 army lists for free and unlimited if you pay for Warhammer Plus, right? But then if I pay for Warhammer Plus, there should be a version of the subscription that I unlock one codex for the duration of my Warhammer Plus, right? And then there should be a version of it that I can pay extra where I just have every codex unlocked.
That'll never happen.
I know it won't, and it should.
No, it shouldn't. It should not.
Why not?
Okay. From a business perspective, that would be the death of the business.
Why?
Because it is not you who they're catering to. You who buys 1 or 2 codexes in addition, and that's it. They are literally catering to the person who bought 4 codexes last edition, will buy 4 codexes this edition, because when the first codex came out, they wanted Space Marines, and now this codex is sisters, and ooh, that's exciting. And they didn't just buy Space Marines, so now they'll buy this on top of it, because $60 spread out over 4 months isn't that bad.
So this person that you're saying bought 4 codexes last edition and will buy 4 codexes this edition, right?
Yeah.
So that's a total spend of about they're about $50 US, right? I'm still trying to mentally do the conversion down. They're like 65 up here. So call it $200 US that they spent over the course of 2 years for an edition, right?
Yes.
If I take that exact same person and I tell them for $20 a month, you can have access to all of the codexes. You don't have to buy the codexes. Over that same 2-year period, they have paid $240. And you're telling me that is worse for the business.
I also think there's an argument to be made, like you were saying, with that the Russian sites that they can't touch. Why would I ever buy a codex?
But this is what I'm saying.
I don't need it.
Because if you make the ecosystem easy to engage with and keep people on platform, you're not going to convert everybody that's using these Russian sites, but you'll convert enough that just want it to be simple and in one place. They don't want to have 2 different apps that they're looking at. They would rather engage with GW Official. There are a lot of people that will not use pirated content unless they have to, myself included.
So my counterpoint to that is, I think that runs along the same argument lines of, well, 3D printing is going to kill GW.
No. Yeah. This is what I'm saying. If you take the codexes, and I mean, even if you leave the codexes at the way that they are and the price that they are, where they've got the rules, there's a digital code included, change nothing about the codexes. So for those of us that like having the books, we can go buy the books, and then we've got our nice, pretty glossy paper with our lore and our pictures, and we can do that. But you put a $15 Canadian, so $10 US, $15 Canadian, you put just the rules, literally no flavor. It's just the rules, but unlocks it in the app, right? And then you can just engage with the GDub app. You don't have to worry about anything else.
Hey,
right?
Snowy.
What?
Are you buying the Chaos Codex when it comes out?
The Knights Codex?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why they won't do it.
I know. But I would buy the Chaos Knights Codex anyways.
Well, this is what I'm saying.
but what I'm trying to get across is that us here in this call are not the people that are going to find our experience improved substantially by doing this. We're looking at the people who are not engaged with this hobby the same way we are, right? I'm looking at somebody like Pilch, who doesn't see a reason to buy a codex. He's going to use Wahapedia and New Recruit basically until they die, because he's not invested into the hobby to the degree where he wants the physical books. He wants his nerd shelf with all of his books on it.
You're right. You've gone to tournaments, right?
Me? No, not yet.
Yeah. Okay. Mark, you've gone to tournaments, right?
Yeah.
I might be speaking differently here. Wahapedia sucks to maneuver around on your phone when you're actually looking for something specific.
Oh yeah, no, I haven't seen it at tournaments, but I have seen like people print out Wikipedia pages.
But when for Nate's specific perspective, that works because he's sitting at a computer to play the game anyways.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that doesn't work.
It's the end all be all.
The app has the core rules there, and like the core rules are there. They're searchable. They have key documents that are listed there. It's got all the most recent things. Like the app is actually really quite nice. Yeah, the issue is that the app pushes people off platform for bits and pieces, and that's where I have a problem, right? I'm saying they can just improve the ecosystem to the point where it keeps people on platform on the app, and then they're going to find they get substantially better engagement.
And I think you are correct. Like, I'm not saying you're wrong. If they spent time to invest in the app and things, I think they're seeing the engagement from the codes from the $65 codexes is enough engagement.
But what I'm saying is I'm not saying that, because what I think you're misunderstanding is I don't want them to get rid of anything they're currently doing. I don't want to get rid of the $65 Canadian, the $50 US codexes with their codes in them. I want those to stay. Yeah. Because for people like you and me who are collectors, avid collectors, and who will buy the codexes because we like glossy pages with pretty artwork and lore stories and all this kind of stuff, those need to still exist, right? It's the same reason, to reference sort of an industry cousin. It's the same reason that despite the existence of things like D&D Beyond, Wizards still publishes all of their new books in physical format, right? And a lot of those are starting to come with codes for D&D Beyond specifically. But D&D Beyond is, I think, the best digital ecosystem for a tabletop game I've ever seen.
It's just a subscription model, though.
Well, it's not just a subscription model. You can buy pieces of their books. You can, if you want to buy a specific race from a book and you want nothing else from that book, you can buy that race for $3 and you don't have to buy the book. And then you've got access to it within their digital ecosystem.
Yeah, even if you buy it, you still have to pay the monthly subscription fee to have the account.
I have a free account with D&D Beyond. I've never paid a cent.
Sick.
I hate subscription-based.
I hate when subscription things are the only option, but subscriptions from a business standpoint are a great thing. Because there are people who would much rather pay once a month not to think about it and will pay more money over time for that convenience. So give me the hybrid model that D&D Beyond has.
You do know that utilities are subscription based, right?
Okay. And I still hate them.
But no, but I'm saying,
point?
For example, in England, in the UK, for a long time, and I might even still have them in some older homes, maybe all of them, I haven't been over there, you would pay to turn your hydro on. Yeah. You would put a pence in to turn the electricity on. It's a pay as you use system.
Yeah, it's coin op, basically.
Yeah, those exist for utilities.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is that when you don't use it, those companies don't make money.
So this is where, because the two places that I'm sort of drawing inspiration from for what I want to see GW do with their digital ecosystem is D&D Beyond, as I mentioned, but the other place is the Game Pass. from Microsoft/Xbox, because being that they are a games company, tabletop notwithstanding, I think the industry has established some things that work really, really effectively and will wildly improve their user experience. And I mean, I'm not asking for everything that I want explicitly, because I want detachments to be purchasable individually. And like, if I know that I am a Chaos Knights player and I specifically want to play the Hounds of Abaddon, I don't know, we don't have multiple detachments, so I'm making up a name. And I only want to play the Hounds of Abaddon, and I don't want to pay $15-$20 for the codex. Let me pay for the Hounds of Abaddon for $5, right? Because I think what they will find if they go down this route is that those nickel and dime digital transactions, where for me as a consumer, I'm not being treated like I'm a bottomless wallet to suck money out of, more consumers will engage with their ecosystem because it's simple.
I would pay for singular detachments. That's my whole issue. I wouldn't use the book. Now, if I got more into the hobby and I was more like Limerick, like I think I would be more like Limerick than like just a casual person. I would want to play competitively and do those sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
I would probably end up, buying books and stuff and getting into it. But I haven't even bought a model because I can't decide what army I want to play. That's why I love tabletop, and that's why I love the app when I can actually look at data sheets for models.
The app is nice. It's well designed. It runs nicely.
When I get paywalled out of looking at just a singular unit because I didn't pay $60 and get a code, it frustrates me.
And before this argument gets brought up, because I know it will, the secondhand market exists. There are people that buy the books and don't engage with the app. They sell their codes for $10-$15. A company should not rely on that existing.
No.
But this is where I'm saying is they need to really heavily lean into the D&D Beyond model, and they need to start letting us purchase the pieces of the hobby that we want to engage with. Because by and large, and then this is not a universal application, you and I, Limerick, are too far gone for this to apply to us. We're already the snowball down the hill. But if that one $5 detachment purchase makes it easy for someone who is relatively new to the hobby, who they've dipped their toes in, they've bought a few models, they're getting ready to play at their local game store. If they go to the app and the app is like, oh, you play Null Maiden Vigil, that's not the free detachment that you have access to. You can have it here for $4. And it's $4, and then you've got your detachment. You don't have to pay a subscription. You've got access to 5 army lists in the app. You can pay us, $20, and we'll give you 5 more. I'm literally just throwing numbers. Don't get mad at me for the amounts. We've also got this $10 subscription. You get unlimited army lists. We've got this subscription that's $25 a month that unlocks all of the content. There's this subscription that's $15. You can pick a couple of things to unlock as long as you have your subscription. Some flexibility within their digital ecosystem like that is going to go miles. I wish I haven't looked all that hard, but I don't think we have a lot of data on how much money Wizards has made off of D&D Beyond. And being someone who is at maybe a casual partaker of D&D content creation, everybody uses it. Everybody uses it, despite the fact that the dice rolling on it is ass and the functionality doesn't work great most of the time. Everybody uses it because it's easy, because you can engage with the content at your pace. You can buy the pieces that you need specifically. You're not staring down the barrel of potentially $300 in books just to play the game, of which you need a grand total of like 8% of. You can go to the app, the website, and it'll say, oh, you want to play this race and this class. It's going to cost you $9 to buy the pieces that you need. Great. Cool. Now I'm done.
Can I tell you what they'd say?
What?
That's not how we want new players to get into the game.
Why though?
Combat Patrol.
Well, okay, so are the Combat Patrol detachments free?
Yes. I'm looking at the Sisters one right now. Gives me the rules and everything.
Combat Patrol. Okay. My issue with Combat Patrol is that the balance is ass.
Oh, it totally is. And I'm not saying that's the way they should do it, but that is their answer to how to get people into the game.
Well,
You
okay,
buy
but
this
we're not
box, you get to play the game.
like I'm speaking from a wish list. Like I'm rubbing my genie's lamp, and this is what I'm asking for.
Right, but I think and again, not disagreeing with what you said, but the system that they have set up, the path to playing isn't isn't viable. The changes you want aren't viable because of how they set up the path to play.
But the
You buy
changes
the
I want
Combat
are
Patrol.
viable because if they're gonna make Combat Patrol the version of the game that new players are intended to engage with, Combat Patrol needs the attention that it's not getting. It needs
Except
to be included in balancing.
because every new codex has had a new Combat Patrol, and I've heard they're wonderful.
Okay, that's great. I'm glad. I don't engage with Combat Patrol because again, I'm so far down the rabbit hole you can't see my feet anymore. Like,
Right, but you just told me that your original wish list wasn't for us anyways, because we'd still buy the books.
but this is what I'm talking about, is that sure, great. The Combat Patrol is free to engage with. It's one box, you buy it. You can go and play 500-point games of Combat Patrol. I am glad that that is working the way that it's intended. And if that means that they don't make any of the initial detachments free, I'm okay with that. I should still be able to buy the detachments individually. I should still be able to make more lists on the app without paying for a subscription.
So I do not have a defense for the app thing. Not that I'm defending GW anyways.
No, I
You're
realize
correct.
that. You're taking the ante to my point, so we get to talk it out. I appreciate it. Continue.
You're correct. I don't have an anti to the app thing. The app is wonderfully done. The Battleforge not being unlimited is stupid. You don't need to paywall and then paywall and then paywall and then paywall.
Yeah.
If I can't build my list because that's the list number 3, but I can't build my list because I'm also don't have detachment, then it doesn't matter if it's list number 3, does it?
Yeah, and this is the
Anyways.
reason that the community resources that exist in the nature that they do, is because engaging with the official ecosystem is like pulling teeth as soon as you get beyond Combat Patrol.
Right. But I think they would say, okay, this is how we want people to engage in the hobby, and this is how we believe most people would. And to a degree, I think they're correct. How most people get the most of the hobby.
See,
You buy the Combat Patrol.
I disagree with the attitude that you're presenting because I think you are giving GW too much benefit of the doubt. I don't think they're coming at it from a standpoint of this is how we want people to engage with the hobby. I think they're coming at it from a standpoint of we really want to show growth on Warhammer Plus at our next earnings call, and we think this is the best way to force people into it.
Their shows are too good for that shit. For that, I'm sorry. You can hate the app all you want.
I'm not saying that it's not worth it. I'm saying
No,
that the
but I'm
decisions
saying-
on what they're paywalling and where is not coming from a place of intentional design for how to get people to engage.
All right, maybe I don't know. Anyways, the how I see it is you buy a Combat Patrol, you get your rules for your Combat Patrol from their website, you play your games. You're like, hey, I really want to expand. How do I do that? Buy the Codex. The Codex will tell you everything you need to know about your Combat Patrol and how to expand. And now you have your Codex. Whereas if you were to go, okay, I want to play this detachment, they'd be like, well, why that detachment? And not like I think the idea of unlocking information works better with the Codex being after the Combat Patrol and not literally picking and choosing a detachment for $5.
So I don't disagree that the Combat Patrol should be step 1. As long as Combat Patrol is actually receiving care and attention and it's becoming, and I say this from a stance of immense bitterness towards Combat Patrol, because holy mother of God, the Votan Combat Patrol is ass.
Oh, so is the Guard one. I get a freaking
So
Sentinel.
is the Tyranid one.
But this
I
is
get a
what I'm
set.
saying. If the Combat Patrols are miles and miles away from what the army is, then Combat Patrol is not a good introduction to the hobby.
I don't
Right?
want to interject
And if you're,
here, but
sorry,
I
Mark.
just we're going over time and I have a prior engagement, so I gotta go.
Oh yeah, sorry, we're way over. Thank you, Mark, for being here.
Yep, you got it. Talk to you guys later.
Yeah.
Bye bye.
But is the new Combat Patrol for Tyranids bad? The
It's
Insidious?
awful.
The Leapers, the Lictor, and the
Yeah, it's Leapers, Death Shadow, and Lictor.
And when you compare that to other combat patrols,
I
the
don't know
thing-
enough about other combat patrols,
The
but
problem with Combat Patrol, and again, this is coming from a place of immense bitterness towards Combat Patrol, is they have a bad habit of stripping out what makes armies interesting, because they're trying to
you're talking
simplify the
about-
rules.
you're talking about giving my berserkers not blood surge.
Exactly.
Here's
So,
your
like-
jackals, and here's your 20 berserkers. By the way, your berserkers are essentially just melee marines.
So okay, and again, I want to speak to this from a place of where I know things. So I'm going to talk about the Votan Combat Patrol, acknowledging that Votan are currently kind of the redheaded stepchild of the hobby. Looking at, so Warspeak's Prospect is the name of their Combat Patrol. It's a call, 5 berserks, 3 pioneers, and 10 warriors. For sake of argument, we have the berserks are I want to hit things, the pioneers are I'm on a flying motorbike, and the warriors are sort of your basic troop. The call has an enhancement called Waste Feeds the Void, which you can replace with the Pragmat Calms uplink. Their judgment tokens function the same way that the main army's judgment tokens do. So 1 judgment token, you get +1 to hit. 2 judgment tokens is +1 to hit, +1 to wound. The enhancement, which is not one of the main enhancements, it's special for Combat Patrol. I don't have an issue with that inherently. I just it lets the call, which of the units that you can bring, the call can only be attached to the warriors. It lets them reroll hit rolls of 1 and fall back and shoot. Or you can give him the comms uplink, which gives +1 to OC of models in the unit and reroll battle shock test. The issue is the stratagem, because they did bespoke stratagems, which I assume they've done for other armies, but it just this one. Until the end of the battle, each time a Leagues of Votan model from your army makes an attack that targets a specific enemy unit that you've picked, you can reroll a hit roll of 1. Okay, so that's great for the 2 units that the call's not leading, but the call just gives that to everybody that he's leading. You can grant a model lethal hits until the end of a shooting phase. Cool. Not a lot that you really need lethal hits against. You can give +1 to save, which that one's actually quite good, and I'm really upset that it's only in Combat Patrol. The problem is, and I feel like I've said the words "the problem is" like 6 times because I'm very distracted trying to read this. Where I have an issue with the Votan Combat Patrol specifically is that it doesn't take into account the way the Votan play, even a little bit. Because if you got rid of those the Hearthkin Pioneers and you put a single Sagittar in, which from a money standpoint is the same amount of money, from a point standpoint is the same amount of points, but it lets you play Votan the way that they play, where they rely on their transports to get them where they need to go, right? My experience with Combat Patrol has been putting an army down, and then it doesn't feel like the army that I know and love and want to play. And if the newer Combat Patrols have been better, that's great. I'm happy for them. Combat Patrol really feels like an afterthought, to me at least.
Yeah, I get that.
But if
But
the
I also
argument
think-
is that, if the argument is, and I know I'm talking a lot, if the argument is that Combat Patrol is where new players to the hobby are meant to engage first, then Combat Patrol needs to be very purposefully designed to be a microcosm of what the army is.
That's my issue with the Tyrannus Combat Patrol. 2 out of the 3 units in the new one, you don't use the units, regardless of what detachment you're playing. There's better options. I don't know.
I get where you're coming from, and I agree to a degree. My issue or my hesitancy on that is the way the armies work is because the armies have 2,000 points sitting behind them, right?
I agree.
If competitive games were at 500 points, maybe that is how you would play Votan. We've all played 1,000-point games and gone, crap, if I just had this. If I just had 250 more points. But that's because we're used to playing games at 2,000 points where the army plays the way it's supposed to. Combat Patrol is it's not even a 500-point game. Combat Patrol is a combat patrol game where maybe the Combat Patrol Votan don't play like 2,000-point Votan.
That's right. That's my other issue is the combat patrols are not points balanced. They're balanced
No,
around
not at
money
all.
cost. Because what was it? What was the one that you tried, Pilch, and we did the math on it. And the Votan Combat Patrol is about 460 points or something like that. And whatever
I think
it
was Custodes.
Was it Custodes? And
I think so.
Did you have more or less than me? Was that?
I had less than you. I think I had 6 models.
Oh yeah, you had like 360 points.
Yeah.
That's my other problem.
Granted, it's not a new one by any means.
Custodes, because they're allowed a... Give me a second, sorry. They're allowed their shield captain.
Mm-hmm.
And it was
the shield captain, 2 Virtus, the new one. The shield captain, 2 Virtus Praetors. Looks like...
So we'll do the old one. Tristan, not the Gilded Guardian Patrol, whatever.
Oh, is Guardians of the Throne the old one? I thought Strain's
No,
Gilded Blaze was.
His is the new one. Because the old one had the choice of you could do, so it was Shield Captain, it was 5 Persecutors, 5 Vigilators, and either Guardians or Praetors. So you're either at Guardians, you're either at 410 points if you choose the Guardians, or if you go with the Praetors, 560. Oh no, sorry, that's wrong. 380.
Yeah.
Which even then is still laughably, I believe, higher than the Astra Militarum.
I can't find a Death Shadow in...
It's a Neurotyrant. They named them.
It's a... Oh, okay.
It's the same like in the Custodes one, it's Shield Captain Tyvan.
Okay. Yeah, for the new Tyranids one, it's 385 points.
Yeah.
But they all have Infiltrator. The Lictor has Lone Operative and Stealth.
Well,
it's
the Lictor always has that.
Using Infiltrator is not something that new players should be forced into. Like, Infiltrator is hard to use.
But the idea is, if you're picking, like everything, if you're picking combat patrols, do you want the stealthy or like the combat patrol that plays that way? And I think this is where you might have an argument of, okay, but there's no way to play Tyranids that way.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'd see that as the biggest difference in the combat patrols, because the other ones I've seen are relatively good.
In my opinion, this ties back to my argument that every army list should have their index detachment remain free. Because then what they should be doing for combat patrol, and I'm sure there's a cost factor to this with the models, but I really think this is the better way to do it, is that the combat patrols should be designed to be functional 500-point armies within that free index detachment. Combat Patrol doesn't need its own bespoke detachments anymore. It's less things for them to balance and maintain.
Yeah, I didn't even realize there were different stratagems and stuff for Combat Patrol.
But that's just it. Because it's all bespoke, it's not getting any balancing outside of the core rules changes.
Yeah. I don't know. I think there's definitely issues with bits and pieces.
So the Astra Militarum Combat Patrol is 360 points.
So's the Votan.
It gives me a 5-man squad or a command squad, 2 Cadian shock troopers, a field ordnance battery, and an armored sentinel. So nothing. Well, I mean, you everything but the field ordnance is usable in a 2,000 point game, but you're not bringing 2 Cadian shock troops.
But this is what I mean.
You're bringing 8 of them.
Like if you're gonna tell me that Combat Patrol is the gateway drug, then
And it is.
it needs to, but it isn't, because the problem is if I take a new player and I present to them Combat Patrol, and let's say they want to play Tyranids, and I'm like, okay, great. The only Combat Patrol they're selling right now is this sneaky Tyranids list. You're not going to use any of these models once we stop playing Combat Patrol in 2 weeks.
If you want to be competitive, the flip side being, so from a sales perspective, you'll need to buy these new ones.
In the certain point in case scenario of Tyranids, though, even if you do use like Von Ryan's Leapers and a Neurolictor and a Lictor, if you're trying to base your whole army around infiltrators and that type of gameplay, I don't think you're competitive at all, like in a competitive scene, and I don't think you're competitive in a casual scene.
No.
Well, no,
And
and like I
that's
said,
just Tyranids.
In the specific Tyranid sense, I think you're correct there that the Beast of Argeist is a better combat
1,000%.
than the Lictor one.
But the issue is that they don't sell the Beast's Combat Patrol box anymore.
No, you're right. You can still buy the models, but you're right.
Yeah, but the whole point of a Combat Patrol box is that you save like 20-30% by just buying the box, and it's a one-stop shop, right? The idea is for new players that they can walk in, they can buy one box and walk out and be ready to play. And
But yes,
they can semantically, they can't practically, because again, as soon as you graduate from Combat Patrol to real games, you very quickly realize in many cases that those models just aren't useful.
except that you play a Knights list, which is the same freaking idea. None of the Knights you run are useful.
Not in a tournament, but they're fine casually.
And if you like Von Richter's or if you like the look of the models, you can upgrade that army to a 2,000 point game and still have those models and be competitive. Yes, the whole army won't be infiltrators, but you can still use them.
Yeah. I mean,
I suppose
you use Lictors and a Neurolictor if you need it, but Leapers are just bad. But yeah.
Yeah, but you can still use them.
Yeah.
My issue is that you're right. If you're buying it for not the models but the rules, which is something you disagree with to begin with,
Yep.
then this Combat Patrol is going to steer you down the wrong path.
Yeah.
But if
All
you're
right,
buying
boys.
it based off the models,
I gotta go.
and
Yeah.
I think we should probably actually call it.
Yeah, we're gonna probably wrap it there. The short version of all of this conversation is Combat Patrol is not a gateway drug. GW needs to do better digital distribution, and
Play what you think looks cool.
yeah, models are forever, rules are temporary. Thank you for being here for a very long episode of Blackstone Fortress. We will see everybody again in 2 weeks. Take good care of yourselves and stay weird. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.
All right, recording's out.
I enjoyed that session.
It was good. We should tell Ryan to skip more often. Actually, no, we would have gone until like 10:30 if he was here.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to put myself into BRB for a bit, and then chat when we get back. We're going to play some Space Marines, so don't go nowhere.
All right.